And we're on. Hello and welcome to podcast episode 100. Yes, the milestone of Rope-a-Dope Boxing, where the two Daves are back once again to bring you all your boxing news. And we're joined, as you can see on YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube, a very special guest, a guy we've been trying to get on for a long, long time. I've nicknamed on this podcast before the Boxing Guru. It's Mr. Liam Tully. Liam, brother, thanks for coming on. We've waited ages for you to come on. It's always nice to have different guests that love the sweet science like me and Dave, talking different views, opinions, thoughts on boxing. Thanks again. And how are you, brother?
No, thank you very much for having me on, lads. Yeah, it's been a while in the making, but good to be on. Looking forward to chewing it up with you boys tonight. Always enjoy listening to your takes and your content each week. So looking forward to getting involved.
Yeah, exactly the same, mate. Exactly the same. So anybody that from the boxing community that does watch various podcasts, listens to various podcasts, you'll obviously recognize Liam's face. You'll recognize his voice. If you haven't, or if you don't, crack into SW Fight Hub, where he's involved with Sam and Jay, and they do a fantastic weekly episode called No Punches Pulled. He does. You do a podcast as well with Jay's Fight Talk as well.
Yep, straight talk.
Yep. And you obviously do your own one, Jay, and Liam's Fight Night Picks, which is obviously a great listen as well, and which I think me and Dave are booked into next week for the Tank versus Roach fight, aren't we?
Yes, so my own show is relaunching this week, so stay tuned tomorrow. I'll be announcing the relaunch for the new channel. That obviously Steve talks boxing. He's decided not to carry on with his channel, so there's a new home for Liam's Fight Night Picks. So stay tuned for the announcement tomorrow. Episode is dropping on Wednesday.
So crack into that. And obviously, guys, as you're sitting there via YouTube, like, share, subscribe, you know, the usual T's and C's. Obviously, if you listen via Apple or Spotify, any of those kind of podcast platforms, do exactly the same there. So we'll do a review today, guys, and we'll do a preview of the big card coming up this weekend. We'll leave out our normal segments because we've got a lot to cover. As I said, there we've got the Boxing Guru on with us. All the episodes I've watched of you, Liam, there's never been a time I've watched an episode where you've said, I don't know. You've got an answer for everything, which I love. So this is why it's going to probably be a bloody long episode. Do you know what I mean?
Pressure's on then to not say I don't know, isn't it?
Exactly. The pressure's on, but it has been a busy weekend. It's going to get busier, but we'll crack on to what we've just seen over the weekend. And we'll start on Friday. We'll start on Friday over in, yes, get me notes, Dave, over obviously the MSG Theatre. The main event, Keyshawn Davis taking on Dennis Berinchyk for the WBO lightweight title. Just a brief rundown for anybody that's not too educated on these guys. Keyshawn was the contender. He was coming off a fantastic 2-round demolish of Gustavo Lemos, going in against the champion, Dennis Berinchyk, who we last saw out back in October. I think I'll get my dates right, against Emmanuel Navarrete, getting the job done on a split decision there. Both unbeaten guys going into it, this one, lads. Both stellar amateurs, medal win, both won silver medals at the Olympics, two completely different styles, 11 years in difference. Good build up to fight week, whatever you thought of it, whether it was fake beef with the fruits and the kind of racist comments. It kind of made heads turn, if you like, and get a few more people watching it. On paper, it was a very, very good fight. Well, at least you think it would be. Now, I'll go straight to you, Liam, but before I go straight to you, 2 points I want to make. And I'm not suggesting anything bad of Keyshawn here, because me and Dave are massive fans of Keyshawn on here. The last 2 fights, all of a sudden, he's hitting people with one-punch power and they're getting hurt. But I'm putting that down to man strength. And my second point is, Dennis Berinchyk literally grew old overnight. It wasn't the same Berinchyk we've seen in his previous 18, 19 fights. It was just, when the cliche comes, guys, about a fighter grows old overnight, that's what I thought I saw on Friday night, guys. So, yeah, Liam, how did you take my points here, obviously, and how did you see the fight going? And how did you expect the finish you saw on Friday night between Dennis Berinchyk and Keyshawn Davis?
First things first, echo the sentiments of you boys. I'm a massive Keyshawn Davis fan. As soon as this fight was announced, felt like this was going to be his coming out party. In terms of how I saw the fight beforehand, I did back him for a stoppage, but I thought it would come in the second half of the fight. I thought he'd have to wear Berinchyk down more. I did think it would come via a body shot. I did say that last week, but I was thinking more towards the end of the fight. A tough, durable Ukrainian that knows how to navigate a fight is how I saw Berinchyk coming into it, and fully expected him to take Keyshawn deep. In terms of did he age overnight, it's an interesting one, really. I mean, 36 years old, Berinchyk going into it, and okay, he had to win against Navarrete, and Navarrete that was moving up in weight, remember? So I always felt he had the advantage in that fight just from being a natural at that weight. But he's not really fought anyone. Navarrete is the only name on his professional record that you look at and go, oh, that's a good name. That's a he's building something here. So going into the Keyshawn fight, I mean, it was a lovely bit of top-rank home cooking is the way I look at it. If Navarrete won, it would have been a lovely in-house fight, wouldn't it, for that WBO belt? Navarrete didn't win, so they had the option on Berinchyk, and they made the fight. But I always favoured Keyshawn. I just thought Berinchyk, yes, was a good amateur, but hadn't shown enough as a pro, coupled with his age. I just felt it was tailor-made for Keyshawn to make a statement, and a statement he made. Look, most fighters establish a jab, don't they, to the head in the first couple of rounds. Not Navarrete, sorry. Davis was establishing it to the body, wasn't he? From the first round, he was putting in the body work. And by the time he landed the first knockdown from a little inside body shot in the third round, he'd already landed 10, 11, 12. So he's softening up Berinchyk. You could see what the game plan was. It was executed perfectly. And now, for me, let's see him in against Andy Cruz. That's the fight I want to see. I think if Loma retires, the IBF belt will become vacant. Cruz is the number one with the IBF. You can see that being put on the line for that. And you sort of get a unification fight between the two amateurs that have already fought 4 or 5 times, I think it is.
Dave, you see it the same way, mate?
Yeah, I totally agree with Liam there. I do like the Keyshawn that we're starting to see now. I feel like he's built up to this moment. I feel like, you can see his progression from his earlier days. I know he's had 13 fights, but you can see now he's sitting down on his shots. He's quite happy to be in the pocket and throw meaningful, hurtful shots, which makes him exciting. We spoke about, we talk about it quite a lot on here, about the Black American fighters are getting a lot of stick. The crowd are booing them, like Shaq or Stevenson and that. He's getting a lot of stick, but we like the sweet science and all that sort of stuff. But the excitement's not there. With Keyshawn, you're getting both now. You're looking at his fight, you're looking forward to his fights, and now you're going to start expecting knockouts. And I just like what he's doing now. He's sitting down on his shots. He's digging the body shots in. He's got intent there. And in a couple of fights ago, just before the Lemos fights, we were still like, is he ready? Is he ready? But he's showing his last 2 fights that he's good to go. And I'm with Liam there. That it's brewing very nicely for the Andy Cruz fight. And you see that Olympics, it gives him needle. And Andy Cruz's last fight, he got out of the ring and he went over to him and he tried to shake hands and I think that really irks him. And I think it's building up to be a lovely fight going forward. And we were looking at styles and stuff like that before, and you would have favoured Andy Cruz going into it. But these last couple of fights now, I'm not sure. Like I'm really high. We was high on Keyshawn Davis, but he's brought in extra excitement now. He's bringing something to his game that eyes. Like I say, in America, they based on that fight on Saturday night or Friday night, sorry, he I think the Americans can now get behind him. I think he's going to have a lot of support based on his performances and the ways that he's approaching fights. I think he's the guy now that they're going to start backing. Like I said, there's been a lot of stick being thrown around for the slick boxers and that, but I think Keyshawn Davis has got through that, and he's bringing excitement to it. I think he's going to get a lot of a backing in.
100%. Well, Liam, you made a good point there about we never really seen Berinchyk in with any kind of opponent. Look at the resume, the CV. There's no one that sort of bounces off there like Navarrete. But what we have seen of him previous is like the gas tank, the durability, the downloading, the hard to get rid of. That when I said he's kind of aged over, like that, like literally disappeared. It was like Keyshawn's tagging him, and he's feeling it. He was like lunging in, lunging out. Couldn't work out how to work what Keyshawn Davis was doing. And I've got to say, lads, I thought their corner work going from the 3rd round going into the 4th was fucking dire. He had blood pissing out of his nose, and they sent him back out. I don't know if you guys noticed that. Yeah, that was terrible.
Sorry, mate. Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, how many times do you see a fighter in the latter years of their career win a world title, and it's almost as if mentally they check out of the game? For all we know, Berinchych's aim was to win a world title strap. He achieved that against Navarrete. He wasn't too fussed if he beats or lost to Keyshawn on Friday night. I do wonder how that factors in. 36, he's probably secured his family and his kids' future now, so that might be what his mindset is. We know, especially the Ukrainian fighters at the moment, they've got one eye on what's going on outside of the ring for obvious reasons. And Berinchyk in with Team Usyk, him and has been on the front line of the territorial army alongside Usyk. You do wonder if his mindset's thinking, get this fight out of the way and I can worry about stuff a bit closer to home. But yeah, the corner work, mate. Obviously, I was doing a watch along at the time, so I didn't have any sound on, so I couldn't hear what was being said. But no one was looking at his nose. No one seems to be giving him a G up. And it was even a little thing.
Oh.
No one told him to make an adjustment to pull his arm down to cover from the body shots. It was almost as if they were happy for him to just walk forward in a straight line and see how many punches he could take.
I was disappointed, lads. I've got to admit, I was for a world title fight. I think me and Dave said it would go the distance, but it'd be points. I'll have to look back at our prediction league. But I was, in one sense, I was happy for Keyshawn, the way that he got rid of him in 4 rounds. But in another way, I was disappointed. I thought it'd be a little bit more competitive. However, when I did say about his man strength, the last 2 opponents, Liam, he's blasted them out. And we look at his previous fights. Yes, it's a learning curve. He's come from the the amateur scene to the pro. He's adapting, etc. But when we see him in the past, he's trying to blast people out with 2, 3, 4 combination punches, and the guys are all durable. And he's like, "Oh, well, I'm winning rounds. I'm trying my best, but I'll take rounds off." And he gets a bit lazy. Now he's just tagging them. He's tagging them, and they're fucking getting hurt. So I'm not going down the Conor Ben fucking egg route, nothing like that. But his man strength as well, whether it's a cliche or not, boys, his man strength seems to be coming to him at the right time. Now he's got that belt.
He's boxing smarter. You can see the Bomac effects on him. It's the Terence Crawford approach of you don't need to get rid of a guy with 1 punch. You can systematically break them down. So think what Crawford done to Errol Spence in their unification fight a couple of years ago, nearly now. It's a systematic breaking down process, and it may take 7 or 8 rounds to happen, which is the school of thought I was going down. You may be able to get an opponent out early, but it's just about channeling your energy in the right way for me and not overexerting yourself, because Keyshawn Davis was looking ragged and a bit, susceptible to taking punishment in the back end of some of his earlier fights. But like you say,
that's what I mean. Yeah.
His man strength's come in. He's calmed himself down, and you can tell he's got full faith in Bomac and what that gym's telling him, and he puts all his trust. You look at him in the corner between rounds on Friday night. Yes, sir. Yep. Nodding his head, fully agreed, fully relaxed. Didn't look for a second like he was questioning the information he was being given. And that's when you got a happy and dangerous fighter.
Are you referring to somebody else on that card, ignoring his corner as well?
What you're talking about, mate.
Yeah, we're getting to that in a minute. So just quickly on this one, day before we move into the next fight, obviously we've got Loma, one of the champions, Tank, and Shaka, the other 3 champions. Obviously, Loma, we don't know what's happening with him yet. Tank is turning into a bit of a Canelo, isn't he? He will dictate when, where, how, and why he fights. So, and obviously he's a PBC fighter. Shaka is supposed to be one of his best friends, so Keyshawn's gone down that kind of route, but I won't fight my best friend, which I totally disagree with. So can you see him fighting any of those other champions, or do you think it'd be a case of Top Rank keeping it in-house, fighting someone like a Muratella, which would still be a kind of prospect / contender? I don't even know if it's a step up, but how do you see, who do you reckon, Dave, he's going to go for next, or Uncle Bob's going to navigate him into?
I just can't see. I don't think he's going to make the Shakur fight. I think he's openly come out and said that he won't make that fight. Tank's a difficult one for me. I mean, I've mentioned about what he wants to achieve, and what he's a champion, but he's never fought a reigning current champion, or he doesn't seem to want to unify. And there was talk of retirement the other day, and I found that very strange. Like he sort of clocked it, but he's never really pushed to fight current champions. It's a strange one with Tanks. So I just don't know if that fight could get made. So I do believe out of the 4 champs, it would be the Loma route. But again, we still don't know what's happening with Loma. And like Liam said there, it is all sort of geared to an Andy Cruz fight. It looks like it's heading that way. And if you look at the 4 names there now, especially when you put Keyshawn in there, that's a fantastic quartet of champions.
Division.
There.
It's a good division, isn't it?
It really, really is. And it was how good would it be if we could get them all, fighting each other, having a round robin. But I just don't see it. The PBC one's a difficult one, because they do like to keep it in house. And the fact that and that Keyshawn and Shakur Stevenson are friends, so it only sort of leaves the remaining belt, and which Loma holds. So I do believe that's the way to go. But like you said, the Muratella fight, that'd be a good fight. That really, So it's a difficult one, because that is a great division, and it could really set fire if the champions did fight each other.
Yeah. Does Eddie let Andy Cruz step in the ring with this version of Keyshawn Davis, Liam?
I think Keyshawn crosses the floor to Matchroom within the next year. I don't see him staying with Top Rank much longer. If he wants the big fights, if he wants to look beyond 135 up to 140 in the future, he'll cross the floor to Matchroom. So if that happens, yes, Eddie puts them in together. Eddie sees a pound note. Eddie sees 2 or 3 fights between them over the years. He'll allow the fight to happen because he can see the bigger potential, and you can bet your bottom dollar he will lobby for that IBF belt to be on the line if he does make that fight.
Yeah, totally agree. I just quickly there, I put on the banner of anybody that can't see it, quick time Keyshawn, because I heard a stat, correct me if I'm wrong, lads, that I think he's the second fastest person to win the lightweight title in 14 fights. I may have got that wrong.
Yeah,
but he's
just behind Loma.
That's it. Just behind Loma. Yeah. So fair play to Keyshawn Davis. Right. Question here, guys. How good is Abdullah Mason? I don't care who wants to answer before I start waxing lyrical about this kid.
I'll quite happily answer it. He's amazing. He's absolutely amazing. I watched, obviously I watched the fight, but I watched it back again today. And his shot selection and his speed is incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And again, he's another one that throws shot with spite. You just hear the thudding shots. Every shot he throws, even the jab, is boom, boom. And it's just a quickness that I love about him. And again, he made light work of his opponent, and now they're talking, and they seem to be moving him in the right direction. You know, his next opponent is Quella. They're putting him out against. That's a good fight, and at the right time. But he's incredible, mate. So exciting, so explosive, so accurate as well. His shots are just so accurate, and yeah, what a fighter! And what we're obviously going to be a world champion for me.
He's 20 years old. He's only 20. What did you make of him, Liam? That was a step up for him on paper. It's a step up. That guy went in with Manuel Holmes, went in with Rolly Romero. I mean, we ain't fans of him on this podcast. Nothing against him personally, Rolly, but I just think he's a rubbish world champion, or was a rubbish world champion. Yes, he hits hard, but he struggled with Holmes, and Mason's gone in there and actually demolished him in 4 rounds, knocked him down 4 times. I think that's the first time he's ever been dropped and stopped. So massive statement, mate.
Yeah, look, me and the boys said last week that if Abdullah can get him out of there quicker or get him out of there, which Rolly didn't manage to do last September, then it's a huge statement. You then add to the fact he's 20 years old, and his punch selection and the way he handles himself inside the ring as if he's a 30, 40 fight veteran. You don't see 20-year-old kids very often. Yes, you see the razzmatazz and the cockiness and the arrogance of youth, but you don't see them able to systematically break down an opponent. And yes, it looked flash, and yes, it was big thudding shots, but you could tell there was a thought process going on with everything he's done. The only danger is you don't want him getting high off his own supply, so to speak. Look, everyone is waxing lyrical out of him. He's a 20-year-old kid. He's going to have his ear to the ground of this social media generation. As much as his team probably try and keep him away from it, he's going to be seeing what people are saying about him, that he's the next, he could be the savior of American boxing alongside Keyshawn. Is something I've seen after the weekend. You've just got to keep him focused and keep him in the gym, because the job's not done yet. I mean, I think, not saying Jeff Lacey was ever on the same level, but Jeff Lacey, another brash, cocky American that done everything right. Then when he was a world champion and when he had his big litmus test against Joe Calzaghe, came up short and was never the same fighter again. Abdullah Mason doesn't want to fall into that category at all. He's a very talented kid. He can carry American boxing and even Top Rank on his back for the next 5 or 6 years. Keep him focused, keep him in his lane, and keep him engaged. Get him back out by May. If we're not seeing Abdullah Mason by May, June time, then Top Rank, I'd be getting onto Top Rank if I was him, saying, come, give me a fight, give me a fight. The activity and keeping him in the public eye, that's how you're going to build him as a star and how you're going to ensure that he fulfills his potential for me.
Yeah, go on, Dave. Like I say, it's especially with a young rising star like Abdullah Mason, the whole public, we're doing it over here with Moses Atuma. Everyone's on him, and you're right in what you're saying there. Trying to keep a 20-year-old grounded and not believing his own hype, and that is a hard thing to do. And like I say, we've all just whacked lyrical about him here, so it's everyone's doing that, and it could quite easily get caught up in it. And he is a special talent, but I agree with Liam there. He should be out there, fighting 4 or 5 times a year. There is no rush. There is no rush. But it's very difficult not to rush him when he performs like that. So it's so hard. But yeah, it's going to be a good journey to watch. Yeah,
you just made the Moses Atama comparison, mate. You look at what Moses Atama done last year. He had 4 fights, and each fight was a gradual step up, wasn't it? I mean, no one expected him to get rid of Dempsey McKean in just over 90 seconds. And now the challenge is, where do you put him? Because if you bring him back down too far, you have people like us moaning that, well, you put him at that level. So you've got to be careful with Abdullah. I mean, getting him someone that maybe has been in with a final eliminator before is the right route to go, because at that lower weight classes, it's easier to pick up a belt sooner. as high as we are as on Moses Atama over here, no one's screaming for him to go in with Usyk. That's the reality. Whereas in the weight class around where Mason's mixing, if you another 2 or 3 fights, if you put him in with a world champion, he may not be the favourite, but you'd be intrigued to see what he's going to do because of everything he's showing on the journey.
Yeah. So do we move him up carefully? As in, I was obviously, we go through the rankings when we're doing notes for the podcast. For me, a perfect opponent, a Brit, might be a Maxi Hughes, if you like. It's got the names on the resume, former title contender, all things like that surrounding it. Or do we go down the route of what PBC, what Golden Boy seems to do, what Top Rank are doing a lot lately? He's padding out his fucking record. Then we keep moaning, step him up, don't lose interest. He's fighting bums. So where do we do? Do we kind of move him to a Maxi Hughes route, then step him up again, and then is he ready? Because I just said there, guys, how we destroyed Hamas on the weekend, Rolly Marrero couldn't do that. So if I was to say now, Rolly Marrero, I'm not saying that they should make the fight now. I'm not saying that at all, because I get the protecting the O, building the profile and all that kind of thing. But that version of Abdullah Mason beats the version of Rolly Marrero we saw last time out. So it is a gamble, but where would you like to see him go, Liam? Pad the record out, which I'm not a fan of. I think if you're good enough, you should be fighting. A bit like the footballers. If you're young enough, you play. I'm not interested in the business side. I'm a boxing fan. I want to see the best fights made. You can come back from losses, but yeah, what's your thoughts on it, mate? Who would you put him in with next off the top of your head, unless you've done some notes for, an Abdullah Mason fight for next time out, mate?
I mean, looking at it, if you want to keep him in America, because I can't see Top Rank. Gervonta is a heavy favourite against Frank Martin. Well, Frank Martin would be a good opponent, I think, for Abdullah Mason once he's had his time to recover, get him back in the ring. Yeah. I think that's another step up. And it's also a safe step up. It's not a big hitting monster that you worry how he's going to handle. And then if he wins that, you're saying, okay, well, look at where Frank Martin's been. If you want, it's difficult. I mean, you know what they're going to do. They're going to keep it in the house. They're going to probably keep feeding him 8 or 10 rounders against opponents that he wouldn't pay his sparring partners. But if he is someone of Frank Martin's ilk that's been in there against the world level guys, hasn't quite made the grade, but it's still a big enough statement for if Abdullah comes through to say, well, look at what I'm doing to these guys. I'm knocking on that world level door. You can't allow him to go stale and stagnate because, again, 20-year-old kids, you don't want him to lose interest. You want him to stay engaged, stay focused. Correct.
I couldn't agree more, mate. Can't wait to see him out again this year. I'm not too sure about this next guy, though. Jared Anderson, the real big baby. Lads, this was awful. I was really, again, I said about the main event, I was disappointed in a different kind of way. Jared Anderson, I put there, Anderson couldn't be asked. He turned up, won with the jab, was asked questions in the last round, had a bit of an AJ moment, was panicking, he was all over the place, he got tagged, wasn't listening to his corner, refused to do what they asked him to do. Just turned up to got paid, I thought, boys. There was no sort of urgency with him at all. I thought we were going to see I wouldn't say a 2.0 version. I'm not going to be silly about it, but I thought we might see a version that's going to blast out this Greek opponent, a bit of a confidence builder. I am America's saviour of the heavyweight division. He looked far from it. He looked like he didn't want to be there. I don't know what you boys thought.
Yeah, he's a difficult one, Jared Anderson, for me. It's been well documented about his, does he live the life? He's had a lot going on outside the ring, brushes with the law and whatnot. But he turned up overweight. He turned up. He didn't seem interested. He's in the corner. They're telling him and Joe, what the corner work and the advice being given to him on how to stop this guy was very good. Work to the body, break him down. And he goes, I don't like it. I'm hitting his elbow, and things that he was coming back with in the corner. It was.
He was dictating to them, wasn't he? He was kind of dictating to his corner, kind of thing.
And he was coming out with stuff like, I don't want to go 10. But this guy's tough. It was really, really alarming sort of things coming from his corner, from himself in the corner there. Like he just didn't want to be there. And now I've seen stuff after. Obviously, the matchmaker for Top Rank, he had a bit to say about it. But he's at the minute he's nowhere near to being the saviour of American boxing. I'd like to say in the Bukakoli fight, because you've got to talk about that. Yes, he got knocked down 3 or 4 times, but I think he showed a lot of heart in that fight to get up. He got up after every knockdown. He tried. He was just in with a better guy, and that happens. You can take that. But this time, he was just for me. I don't know whether it was the opponent, whether he couldn't get up for the opponent in the lead up to it. Doesn't make it right. But it was an odd performance, like you said there. It was just a jab. Didn't want to be there. Arguing with his corner. For me, it's a nightmare performance for me. Like, yes, he got the win, but he didn't. It's be on his record as a win. But the performance and everything as a whole and what was going on he's gone backwards.
Yeah, I mean, the issue you've got with American heavyweights at the moment is
there isn't any. There isn't any.
And boxing isn't their first love. So Jared Anderson is very similar to Dominic Breazeale, who we know in the UK for coming over for AJ's first defense when he picks up his IBF strap. But they were both American footballers at college level that couldn't quite make the step up to the NFL. So someone suggested boxing to them and they went to boxing. Fair enough. I mean, look, they both got into, well, Breazeale challenged for a world title twice and Anderson's still got a way to go, but better than anything the three of us may ever do, but they're not living the life in the same way, whereas it's not their first love. So when you've got to put in those early mornings runs or those, tough spars at the back end of camp, they haven't got the heart. They don't want to be there in the same way that a Tyson Fury or a Usyk or a Lomachenko or someone that's always lived and breathed boxing wants to. And that showed massively in Jared Anderson's performance for me on Friday night. It's almost as if the Bicoli fight showed him how hard boxing can be. You're going to get hit. You're going to get wet. You're going to, you're not always going to win. And it's almost as if he's now going, oh, do I actually want to be here? Do I actually want to be fighting? I mean, it's one thing questioning your corner before a fight or after a fight in private, in the gym during training camp or when you do your reviews after a fight. But to actually be wasting energy in between rounds saying, no, I'm not going to do that, or coming out with some of the other things he was, like you just said, Dave, it stinks. I'm going to call it as it is. It absolutely stinks. And if I'm that corner team, I don't want to work with him anymore. I'm kicking him out of the gym and I'm saying, if this is the attitude you are going to show and the level of disrespect you're going to show to us on fight night, we'll take our 15% of your fight purse, but I'm sorry, you're not welcome in this gym anymore. And then Jared Anderson has to go away, has to find another trainer, but he also has to ask himself, do I really want this life? Because the heavyweight division now, the top 30 in the world, I think he loses to more guys than he beats in the top 30. I thought that before Friday night, but if you look at that position, even someone like a Frank Sanchez or a Junior Farr or a Justice Hooney, I'd put him in with, and I'd have question marks over him beating. And they're guys towards the bottom of the top 30. He's a big lump who, when he let his hands go, when he was knocking over puddings, built up a massive ego. First time he came up against someone that could throw back, he was dropped, stopped, and exposed to an extent because we saw what his limitations are at this time. And now he's come back to it, and you think he's come back to it because he's got a contract to honor, or he's being told he needs to fight rather than he wants to show what he's got to the sport. So if Jared Anderson doesn't fight again this year, I'm not going to be losing much sleep over it based off of Friday night, is me being really honest. And he needs to ask himself some serious questions because, yes, it was a stinker of a performance, but his whole attitude absolutely stunk as well.
Liam, just on that, we're talking there about his attitude and that. Surely that doesn't just come out on fight night. Surely that's in camp. That attitude couldn't have just sprung out on fight night. Surely he was showing signs of that sort of attitude in training. I'm not saying his corner would have thought he would have acted like that or performed like that, but there must have been signs. That for me, I mean, I could be wrong, but surely that just doesn't raise its head on fight night. It can't do.
I agree with you, mate. And I was sitting there watching it thinking, if he's been showing this attitude during training camp, why hasn't it been addressed? Why hasn't it been dealt with? If he's challenging the authority of the trainer, then the trainer should be going to him during training camp. You either start respecting me and what I'm asking you to do, or I'm walking. I don't care if your fight's in 10 days. I can't do my job if you're not showing me the respect. So, yeah, if it's come on fight night, then that's a mentality question that needs to be looked into, because why is he flipping on fight night and not trusting the game plan that's been laid out? But if it's there during training camp, you've got to ask, is the team strong enough to actually challenge him? Or do they want to, work with him that much that they're too scared to pull him up on his behavior and just hope it's going to be all right on the night?
Yeah.
Or like you said, good point you made there, Dave. Or like you just said there, Liam, about the 15%. Is it a case of just putting up with it and then taking the 15% once he's weighed in, get your money, and then basically say, I don't want to work with you anymore, go and find yourself a new trainer? It's
a pretty piss poor attitude for a trainer to have, though. You're there to have the best interests of a fighter at heart. I know it's not always the case, but if you actually are willing to put up with that for 10 weeks and know what's coming, you've got to, that should be looking at yourself in the mirror as much as Jared needs to be. If that's the attitude you got.
Very odd, very disappointing from him. As I said there at the beginning, there isn't any American heavyweights, is there, bar him and Richard Torres Jr. Torres Jr. now, from what we've seen in the news, is being stepped up. Yes, it's in-house against the Gladiator Villanello, but it is a step up. But he hasn't been tested. So what happens if he gets chin checked? Is it the same kind of, oh, he's not that much good at, then we're left with nobody. We're talking about Charles Martin fighting Moses Tuma. It is a really, really poor division for American heavyweights. And it's such a shame to see because they were very dominant, weren't they? In the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. And it's literally disappeared. The 135 division is all about the black American superstars now. So they are the savior of boxing. And, it's the Eastern Europeans and the Brits and a few of the other ones that are dominating the heavyweight division. So, yeah, it is a shame to see. But hopefully we get a better version of Jared Anderson next time out. Xander Zayas, boys. I should have put this the second fight because it was co-main, but I was so high on Abdullah Mason's performance. It had to be spoken about first. Dave is a huge fan of Xander Zayas. I think most boxing fans are. Went in on Friday night against Slauer Spoon. I've got to be honest, the name's funny. It's an odd name, but I've never heard of him. He was an unbeaten German. He came to win. He had pockets of success. I didn't realise he was under the tutelage of Roy Jones Jr. So you can see why he could...
First fight together, mate.
Oh, was that the first fight?
Yeah, first fight together.
So I didn't realise that until I watched it. Xander Zayas is, for me, boys, he's gone from the same kind of narrative as Edgar Berlanga. But with Edgar Berlanga, he's only ever had one style. Both Puerto Rican superstars, building them up a certain way. Berlanga's always been a puncher, and Zayas was in his early days. But he's kind of developed now into a boxer puncher. He was, as Berlanga is still the same. He's just looking for that one punch. You see videos of him in the gym working on stuff, but he never puts it into fight night itself. Whereas Zayas now is, you're not seeing him lose a round. The feet are fantastic. The hand speed's great. The accuracy, the feints. He's just winning round after round after round. However, I have got I wouldn't say a problem because I can't fault his performance. He's gone from this kind of knockout artist, this fantastic, fast, front-footed machine, to kind of, from what I'm seeing in the American media, kind of people kind of switching off from him. It's not so much the boxing fan like us, but the casual, because that kind of explosiveness has kind of disappeared, where he's developing as a very, very, very good boxer. That kind of not jeopardy, that's the wrong sort of word, that the guy that's looking for the knockout's kind of gone. And you see with his previous couple of fights, boys, he is looking for the knockout, but because the guy's rather durable, or because he's stepping up in class, he's not getting rid of him. He's just reverting to his boxing, which is great to see. But I thought the stoppage on Friday night, I've got to admit, I thought it was quite premature. Yes, he was breaking him down. Yes, he was winning every minute of every round. Yes, it probably would have been a stoppage. But that guy, that could have gone on a bit longer. And I thought, my personal opinion, I'm probably talking complete shit. There's, obviously back in the day, well, current day, there's been sort of things about brown envelopes of Top Rank, and nobody wants to fight on Top Rank shows, corrupt judges. It looked like it was made to give him a highlight reel moment when he maybe didn't deserve it around about that time, so people don't lose interest. We know the Puerto Ricans, a bit like the Brits. Me and Dave said it on here before. I don't know if you've ever noticed it. When Puerto Rican fans are in New York or in Puerto Rico, they're all boosted up, they're all singing, they're all having a great time. A small little island there, fantastic boxing community. But I don't want to poo-poo on the parade because I just thought that was a little bit premature, and it may have been a tactic to just get, keep your eye on Xander Zayas. But again, I've ripped there, boys. Zayas needs a name next. He needs a name next because I don't want fans tuning off because this guy is 5-star.
Look, I was impressed with his performance. I felt like the stoppage was coming. I just don't feel it was quite ready there, like you've just said, mate. I mean,
I don't.
Top Rank have a reputation. It's well known within boxing circles that the steak dinners for the officials the night before the fights normally come with a dessert of a brown envelope, but that's just the way it's done. And we're not going to accuse Charlie Fitch, I believe that referee was, of anything from that fight. Don't get me wrong. He'd been in there for the full 7.5 rounds, so he knows how his opponent was doing, how much he had left. Maybe he saw his eyes roll back, something we didn't see on the TV. So I'm not going to say anything. It's not as if it was a completely, Zayas was getting his ass handed to him and the first time he lands shots, the ref jumps in. But yeah, it was premature, if we were honest. It was maybe 3 or 4 punches too early. But the caveat to that is backs against the rope, covering himself up. Did we need to see 4 more punches? Because you never know what's going to happen. That's the other side of the coin.
Sorry to interrupt, Bill. I just think that you're right, exactly what you were saying, and plus he wasn't throwing back. I just think how good Xander Zayas has turned into a boxer, I just don't think he's been spoken enough about, especially around the Top Rank sort of social media bits and bats as well. It's all about other fighters. Maybe because he is boxing now and he's not getting those highlight reel knockout moments. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I can completely agree with you, and his style has changed. There's no denying that his style has changed in recent times, but you've got to play to your strengths. And if Zayas' strength is to box and then take opponents out when they're ready to go, that still wins you fights. That will still win him a number of titles. If Top Rank don't appreciate him, then it's up to him to put on his big boy pants and say, I need to move to a promoter that's going to have my best interests at heart. Because just because you're not getting the push from Top Rank doesn't mean a move to Matchroom or a move to Golden Boy or something isn't going to work out for you because they appreciate him as a fighter more. He does need a name next. And if he gets a name next, that will help with drawing an audience in. He can't main event. And that's not me being horrible. If he main events, it's going to need a couple of Black Curtains jobs to make it look more full up than it is. But you could put him on the undercard of Keyshawn Davis's first title defense, and that would sell well. That's the reality. But he needs big steps now. Zayas is another fighter for me that looks as if he could get bored and lose interest quite quickly if he's not given the right tests. So Top Rank, your TV deal is expiring. No one knows where you're going to be come the end of 2025. You also need to keep an eye on what your prospect fighters are doing because this game is vultures now. Turkey can get them over to Saudi on multi-fight contracts with a load of money. Other promoters are picking up the Saudi money a lot more than Bob and Top Rank are so they can afford more fighters. Not only could Top Rank lose their TV deal this year, but all their brightest prospects could move away as well. And then with whatever they're left with, it's a diluted and piss-poor product from where Top Rank have been for the last 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah,
we've spoken about Top Rank before. Now they promote their fighters as well. For me, we've spoken about me and Dave have Yanni Beck being one of them. They don't seem to do enough, which is why we get so frustrated with Yanni Beck not getting the big fights. Yanni Beck has obviously got someone working his Twitter, and he's very active because it's not English isn't his first language. But we've said it on here a few times, Liam, that I know it's Bob and Bob's 98 and whatnot, and he's there and thereabouts, but he's not. But no one seems to be from Top Rank. You got a mouth horn from Eddie Hearn. He's the easiest one to go to, but he does back his fighters publicly and he does sell fights very well. The Top Rank guys, you don't seem to get too much of that. And what worries me with Zayas is that he falls into that category where, and Dave said, it doesn't get spoken about enough. And then because he's not getting spoken about enough, and his name's not out there. He's not forgotten about, but he's not pushed to the front and centre. So making fights that we want for him, it becomes more difficult because people say he's not a name, and you start going down that route. What's your thoughts on that? On how that they sort of push their fighters out there?
I said last week on No Punches Pulled that the best thing Top Rank can do for their fighters' interests and for a future broadcasting deal interest is put Bob Arum into an honorary position. By that, I mean you've got Kyle Moretti and Todd DeBuff, who are the mouthpieces, who do all the work, but because Bob is there, they don't get to maybe do things the way they want. Allow Bob, as a 98-year-old man, you're not going to kick him out of the business, but move
He's
him
still
to
the puppet
one
master,
side.
Liam, isn't he? Still the puppet master, isn't he?
He is, which is fine. He can be the puppet master in the background, but get Moretti and DeBuff in the main roles, and then you'll see a production and promotion value from two guys who knows how the game works. I mean, Todd DeBuff comes on Sky Sports all the time when the ESPN schedule gets announced, and he can talk as well as anything we've got over here, and he can promote the fights as well. But when you're not the main man and you've got to fall in line with Bob because you don't want to lose your job, you've obviously holding yourself back a bit. The best thing for them would be to get these two men front and center. But it could be too little too late as well, because Zayas, at the point he's at now in his career, he should be getting spoken about on this side of the pond and in America. He's barely a pebble splashing in the ocean in America yet, and he's getting picked up by the hardcore in the UK. But if you stopped 100 people on their way into an arena on a British fight night, you might get 5 who know the name Zayas, and that's the transferable appeal with such a good fighter should be a lot higher than it is.
Agreed.
And by the way, that's the same for Keyshawn Davis. As good as Keyshawn is, he doesn't have that appeal on this side of the Atlantic to the masses. And that, as his career goes on, as maybe he makes the move out to Saudi, is where he's going to struggle.
That's basically, I think, what Dave was saying about Yanni Beck, wasn't it, Dave? Yeah. That's a great point. Now, you walk into arena, ask the first 5 people, they wouldn't have heard of him, especially casual fans who've got no idea who they're up against. So, yeah, it's a point. Here's a name I was thinking out for you, then. What we're talking about just before we move on to the UK card, talking about stepping him up. We just saw a guy in with Ishmael Davis in Serhii Boyachuk. That, to me, would be the next fight I would put him in with. Somebody like Serhii. He can't go for the champions just yet. he possibly could. You know, I'm not going to backtrack what I said. I think if you're good enough, you're ready. But they're not going to put him with a champion just yet. Someone like a Serhij Buyachuk, we've just seen do a job on Ishmael Davis. Now, I think personally, I mean, Dave, I know you're a massive fan of Xander Zayas more than I am, but we just saw, I believe Xander Zayas is a much technical, better boxer in every sense of the way than Ishmael Davis, sorry. So something like a Serhij Buyachuk, would you go down that road, or do we keep padding the record out and people lose interest? It's got to step up sooner or later. It has to.
I don't know if it's ready for that step. That's for me, from where he's been boxing currently to that, I still think there needs to be a middle. I could be wrong. This is just my opinion.
Yeah.
That I think Berinchyk is a very, very good fighter. And listen, yes, Zayas has got the skills to beat him. That seems to me, I think maybe one in between. I don't know how you feel about that, Liam. Is he ready? Is he ready for that jump yet?
It's hard to match again, isn't it, Liam? It's hard to match him again.
I'll throw a name out there. He's fighting out in New York in a few weeks' time, but he's an Irish fighter, Callum Walsh. Callum Walsh, that's the sort of step, because they're both on a similar trajectory. So whoever wins can make the move on towards a Berinchyk, a Charles Cromwell, that fringe championship level. It's a good step up. But also,
that's a good shout. That's a good shout, Liam. Cromwell, that's a great shout.
He'll be 13-0 when he wins on Paddy's Day weekend out in New York in a few weeks' time. 13-0 and 19-0, I think it is. That's the next step you need to make. How hard can it be to work with Dana White, who also had a deal with ESPN for Callum Walsh in America and those people? I know it's still kind of in-house, which is how Bob likes to keep it. I'm sure he can find a way to make an exception for that. And that is as good as prospects fight as you're going to get before you move towards that fringe world level of your Charles Cromwells, your Berinchyks, etc., etc.
I think that's a good shout, Cromwell. Cromwell. I
think he needs one in between, but Cromwell is sort of on. I put him on the same level as Berinchyk. They're there. Give him a fight here, possibly. Callum Walsh type, and then push towards those.
Yeah, I agree. That's what I was a little bit like umming and ahhing about whether it's a Berinchyk now. I think that I do think it needs to step up, but I do think there's a middle ground between Berinchyk and where Zayas is at the minute. So I just think he needs maybe one, maybe two.
Let's give him Ishmael Davis then. Let's do the Davis fight. Let's ban it out for another fight.
Yeah.
But great points there, guys. Just quickly before we do move over to the UK. Should we start feeling sorry for Nico Ali Walsh? I mean, he lost again on the weekend. Obviously, this is Muhammad Ali's grandson. He's a middleweight. He's got so much pressure. People are thinking with the Hatton name, the Ben name, the Eubank name. Those guys that got no pressure compared to this poor kid. He's just not before. He's just not a boxer, lads, is he? He lost. It was a split decision against a heavy underdog, but it was a unanimous decision. He was rubbish. He just hasn't got it, I don't think. And that sounds harsh because they do and I don't. But I can't see any improvement since his debut, boys. I don't know what you think.
It's really difficult. I mean, we've just gone on about how Top Rank don't promote their fighters very well. Who's always the co-commentator, one of the co-commentators on an international broadcast for Top Rank? It's always Nico Ali Walsh. So they push him out there and they give him a platform. Yes, the Ali name definitely helps him, but what he delivers in the ring at the moment, he would almost be better going off TV and doing the American small hall circuit and picking up 7, 8, 9, 10 wins against journeyman type fighters, but that would allow him to progress his skills, practice what he's doing in the gym, and then put him in for a North American belt or something like that. The pressure of him being on Top Rank, being, the Ali name is getting too much for him. And they've tried a different approach for this fight by putting him on the prelims rather than on the main TV broadcast, and it still hasn't worked. I can see a potential there. I'm not saying he's ever going to be a world champion. I can see something there, but I think he needs to take that step back onto the small hall circuit, build himself up, and then come back in 18 to 24 months once he's got some wins under his belt and he's got confidence. Because yes, his ability isn't as great as perhaps we thought it might be, but his confidence is absolutely shot to pieces at the moment. Yeah. And that played as much a factor in his performance on Friday night as his ability for me. You could tell it was absolutely devoid of confidence, and that played a massive role.
We said the same thing about Campbell Hatton after the couple of losses he's just had. They're thrusted into the limelight. Didn't have no amateur experience. The name carries a lot of weight, and he put in. And we said the same thing. There is some talent there, but he needs to do it off out of the limelight. There's too much pressure on the lights, and Nico Ali Walsh is suffering from the same thing. So yeah, I'm with you guys on that one. It's a shame, really. Like I say, but he should go and work on the fundamentals. Get some good men, get confidence, and then put him into the limelight. When you've got a name like Ali and Hatton and Bennett, you're all about you don't have that development. You just put under the light because of your surname, and you get found out, and it's one of them.
Yeah, definitely. Poor old Nico Ali Walsh, but you only wish the best for him, but it wasn't great at the weekend. So let's jump over to the UK then. I've written there on the banner, one too many eliminators for Jack. I'll explain my reasons after. I've ranted and raved on his podcast for months and months and months about Jack Catchall. I am a fan, but I'm frustrated how his career's been navigated. And I've explained that on many occasions. He's fighting eliminator after eliminator. It seems to be eliminator after eliminator. He's getting paid, but he's not getting the fights that he says that he wants. And we'll go straight into the fight, boys. Very close fight, I thought. The right man for me did win the fight. I found it quite boring. We've had the whole Jack Catchall VT beforehand. Great video about him being boring. More about his personality. He was quite boring in the ring. But to sum it up, I had it 7-5 Barboza. And I did think that Jack Catchall waiting to counterpunch and not being busy enough, that style on that particular night was his own kryptonite. He just didn't do enough. And I think and that was the story of the fight. How did you see it, Liam?
So I scored it 116, 112 to Barboza. So completely agreed. Right man won. I had it 8 rounds to 4. Look, let's be honest. Neither of those two men are going to be, I'm not clamoring to get over to America to see Barboza fight or clamoring to get up to Manchester to see Jack fight. And that's no disrespect to them. It's just they're not exciting. It didn't catch fire at all, really. I mean, it was a tough slog. It was a tough watch. Yes, it was a very technical fight, and you could see what Jack's game plan was on the back foot. But
mate, they were trying to checkmate each other, weren't they? Too much checkmating.
It was disappointing. I mean, for that high level and the high stakes it was a disappointing fight. Let's get that out of the way first and foremost, in my opinion. Jack fought the wrong game plan. He needed to fight more how he fought the second half of the Regis Prograis fight, where he was on the front foot and it was his jab dictating the dance. Like you just said, Dave, him trying to be a counterpuncher on the back foot, allowing all of Barboza's pressure to come onto him, it just didn't work. He tried to fight like he did in the first Josh Taylor fight, only he was in there with a naturally bigger guy. So that weight advantage that Barboza had was too much for Jack to handle. It's almost as if he never could adjust either. Whatever rhythm he tried to get into with Jamie and Nigel telling him in the corner, he just couldn't quite make those adjustments. Barboza was half a second quicker than him all night. And yes, Jack had some success in the fight, but it was limited. And anytime Jack had success, Barboza then came back with a good work for 30, 45 seconds. And then you're waiting sometimes 2 minutes for Jack to get more than one punch off back in return. So, look, I've banged the Jack Catchall drum for a long time.
I think we all have. All our Brits have, mate.
Yeah. I made a point last week of saying that if he was a sexier name, or if it was Josh Taylor that result in Glasgow happened to in the first fight, the governing bodies, at least one of them, would have completely mandated him for a rematch straight away. Yeah. Instead of that, every single governing body shafted him. The highest he was ranked after the Josh Taylor first fight was number 6 with the WBO. So he's gone from being number 1 and number 2 with all 4 to number 6. How the fuck does that make sense? Like, he was completely shafted and he's built himself back up. And he's been now a victim of Teo Lopez and the WBO not wanting to strip him because they love the 3% from Teo Lopez. I mean, Teo's biggest fight this year is going to be with his dad, and actually his dad allowing him to fight someone, for me personally. But that just shows that when a fighter has the razzmatazz and they can bring in a lot of money for a governing body, they get given more rope to hang themselves. Think how quickly Usyk got stripped after the first Tyson Fury fight of his IBF belt, or how quickly
because the IBF knew AJ was coming along. 3% out of an AJ purse against Dubois. We'll have that in the meantime. Lovely.
Or the IBF, how quickly they stripped Tyson Fury after he beat Klitschko 8-9 years ago out in Düsseldorf. Yeah, it's just how they do things, unfortunately. Yeah. And you end up then in this position where you keep. I know this is the WBO, not the IBF. So Jack's had to keep getting himself up and keep getting himself up for these final eliminators. Yeah. And was it one too far? Potentially. It wasn't the big name. It wasn't. If that was Teo Lopez in the other corner on Saturday night, I believe we see a different performance from Jack Catchall. That's no disrespect to Barboza Jr., but getting yourself up for Arnold Barboza Jr. for your third final eliminator in a row and your fifth in your career is a hard slog, isn't it? And it's just unfortunate. I mean, poor Jack Catterall, they're now talking about feeding him to Dalton Smith. I mean, 1 minute you're the flavour of the month and you should be a unified champion, and the next I'm not going to say he's cannon fodder for Dalton Smith, but if you look at where their two careers are at the moment, one is almost as hot as you can get, and the other one is coming off of a massive setback. I mean, Jack's handled it well. I'm sure you boys saw his social media post earlier. He's not made any excuses. He said the better man won on the night and he will be back. It's just a long road back, and I think a move to 147 and a fresh division is what comes next for him. I think he'll move up to get away from being in this Shark Tank with the Americans that sort of dominating the division, unfortunately. Not sure if 147 suits him, but I believe it will be what he does.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like he's gone from being in all these eliminators. You know, he did get shafted. I totally agree. But they're now talking about him being a gatekeeper. You know, for guys coming up in one fight. It's a crazy old world, the boxing game. You know, but I say for me the fight he just waited too long. He just didn't do enough, and you know, and there was no urgency for him to try and change it. You know, he was quite happy to just keep trying to do the same thing through 12, and you know, and he knew it was close, but there was no rolling of the dice. There was none of that sort of stuff from him. You know, going for it, and then just at the end of it, he's like, okay, I didn't do enough, but he knew that in the ring still at the end, and that's where my frustration lies with him. Barboza won the fight, and he didn't win the fight. He won the fight, but he wasn't much better. You know, he didn't go there and rip it from him, and you know, he was just busier. And that'd be a tough pill for Jack to swallow. You know, he hasn't been beat up. He hasn't been destroyed. He's been beaten by the busier fighter, and that's going to be a tough one to swallow. But too many eliminators, you know, there was always potential for banana skin for Jack Catterall because, you know, how many eliminators can you have? And unfortunately, this is what's happened to him now. And I'm with you. Is he big enough to move up? I'm not sure. So where does he go? And like you say, they're already talking about him being a gatekeeper. If you can get through a Jack Catterall, then you can move on to world honours. But he didn't. You know, it was unfortunate with Josh Taylor, but he didn't get there. You know, and so yeah, he's I don't know where he goes from here. But again, he'd be kicking himself. He just didn't do enough for me. He really just didn't do enough when he could have. You know, there was plenty of time in the later rounds. For me, Barboza won the last 3 rounds.
Mate, but Barboza had never been past 10 rounds either, so it was quite telling. And he's
never been scheduled for 12 before, mate. That's the first time he's been scheduled for 12 rounds.
That's what I mean. And he won them last 3 rounds, and you just think, you know, it was a frustrating watch because you're thinking, come on, you know. But he was just waiting, and it just and it passed him by, and it's you know, that's a tough pill to swallow for me.
It's a massive missed opportunity. He'll be kicking himself. Yeah. He's grown himself so well in terms of his fan base. He done 9,000 tickets off his own back for this fight, which was pretty much the bulk of the arena that was in there. And it's a tough pill to swallow. I don't think he needs to be making radical changes. Jamie Moore and Nigel Travis, that Moorside gym is the team for him. He doesn't need to be moving. But his output, I mean, he's never had the highest output in the world category, has he? Even in the first Josh Taylor fight, it wasn't like he overwhelmed Josh with punches. He was just accurate with his work. But he needs to do something. And how do you get him up now, especially at 140? No one's going to give him a world title fight. They weren't before, definitely not now. How do you get Jack Catterall up for a fight? I don't even see... They offer him Dalton Smith. I don't even see him really being up for that. What's he going to... In his mind, he'll think, well, Dalton Smith's on the way up, but I've been there. I should be the favourite, even though you'd imagine the betting odds will go in Dalton's favour. It needs to be something really big for me to get Jack engaged and wanting to really put in a good performance again.
In his mind as well, he'd be looking at these, you know, Dalton Smiths and Johannes, thinking, I'm undisputed. You know, he did. You know, we've talked about robberies before, but in his, you know, I mean, that's a tough one to swallow when you're doing all these eliminators. Everyone was in agreement that he won that fight against Josh Taylor. You know, he should have been undisputed. You know, it must be very difficult to you know, lift yourself into fighting an Arnold Barboza. No disrespect to him, when you should have been the unified champ. So you know, he'll look back now and think, you know, he has been unlucky, but And you're right there. How can he get up for like up and coming through when he thinks you shouldn't be in the ring with me? I was undisputed, not officially, but he was. So it's a hard one for him. But also, do you think that I wouldn't say he's been found out, but his style is it's very hard to work out because he's very accurate and he's quite happy to be patient and wait for his chance to tee off. People look at him now and think, because obviously Barboza had done his homework. There was a game plan there for Jack Catchell. Do you think that he?
It didn't even look like a blueprint, to be honest, though, Dave, did it? It was just, as you said, I think all three of us said it. It was just busier. Barboza, you look at the two guys in the ring. You've got WBO judge there. What is he actually looking for? You've got someone on the back foot, and you've got someone on the front foot, someone that's constantly on their toes and throwing more. I mean, from the optic test, you're going to go for the busier guy because the other guy, Jack Catchell, wasn't doing enough. So I don't even reckon there's a blueprint there, mate. But
you could see it was quite clear what Jack Catchell was trying to do, wasn't it? I know he does do that, but he didn't try to do anything differently. Like I say, coming into the championship rounds, there wasn't anything to try and change it up, roll the dice, and there was none of that sort of stuff. So, in a fight like that, do you think is he in that fight thinking he's winning that fight because he was quite straight away knew he'd lost? So, at what point in the fight do you think, hang on a minute, I'm losing this, I've got to do something different here? It was a frustrating one.
Yeah, look, I don't think it was a blueprint that Barboza followed. He was just the busier fighter, and he wanted it more. And I know that sounds a strange thing to say when we know how much Jack wants to achieve a world title that he, wrongly didn't win, but he wanted it more. Jack Catchell looked like he slightly didn't, not saying he didn't want to be there, but he slightly was lacking in the heart we saw in the Josh Taylor rematch, in the Regis Prograis fight, etc., etc. I haven't listened to the fight with sounds, but you'd have to imagine that he wasn't being told in the corner he was behind. Because Jack, you think back to the Prograis fight, after 5 rounds against Prograis, I had him 4-1 down. Jamie Moore in the corner was giving him a rallying cry and saying, come on, you need to fucking turn it on now or you're going to lose this. And we saw the difference in his performance, didn't we? I can only imagine that he wasn't getting that on Saturday. And last thing I want to say on Jack, if that's all right, is you've got to feel sorry for him in another way. He was with Frank Warren, left Queensbury because Frank promised him a world title fight for years. I mean, I saw him in 2019 on the Daniel Dubois undercard at Wembley Arena when he was meant to challenge for the WBO in his next fight. He had a 6-rounder because it was a keep busy fight. That world title fight never appeared. So he left Frank and he signed that 1-fight deal with Top Rank so he could get the Jack fight. Got shafted in that and moved to Matchroom. And he just can't, no one, it doesn't matter who he's with, no one can get him over that final hump. And it's, we're not saying we want to get the violins out and all have a pity party for Jack Catchell, but I can't think of many other examples in world boxing where he's literally moved everywhere he can because they can get him the opportunity. And for whatever reason, he's just been shafted. He's never been given it, has he? And you wonder if he's ever going to get there now.
I'm glad you've made that point, Liam, about being promised a world title fight because I rant and rave about this all the time. I don't see too many people agreeing with me, but I don't care. This is just my thoughts. So I won't go on about it too much, obviously, because of time-wise, and we've got a lot to cover. Jack Catchell, he's got Sam Jones and Eddie Hearn making him a lot of money. The Prograis fight with the Josh Taylor rematch. This fight as well, Barnard Barboza Jr. He's got nice wealth now for him and his family, probably his grandkids. Fair play to him. But from what he was saying after the Josh Taylor fight, he wants world title. He doesn't care how he gets them, where he goes and who he fights. He wants world title fights. That's fair enough. So he's signed with Matchroom. Matchroom have got Subriel Mateus. They've got Liam Parrow at the time, and obviously they've got Richardson Hitchens, all Matchroom fighters, but all affiliated with Eddie Hearn. Should be easier to make. Now, my thinking on this, Liam, has been, right, one of these fights, I will accept I'm going to be the B-side. I'll accept I will travel to America or to Puerto Rico. Eddie says he works for me. I want one of those guys. I'm happy to take a small percentage of the purse. I am that guy. I'm world class. I will go over there. I will beat Hitchens. I will beat Parrow. I will beat Mateus. I'll bring that belt back. Then I'll get paid even more because I'm the A side. Mandatories will be called, and voluntaries will be a given. And I always think, mate, that sometimes your management team and your promoter has to approach these champions and get voluntaries. I know they're businessmen. I know they've got to make money. Then that's what they're in the business for. I know they say well about their fighters. I totally get it. But there's got to be a time, especially in Jack Catchell's career, when you have to look back and think, I should have gone over and put my hand up to fight Mateus. Liam Parrow did it. I could have done it. Do you know what I'm saying? I think money-wise, they've done so well for him, but opportunities-wise, like you said there with Frank Warren, they haven't done their job for him. Not in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, mate. I mean, the 140 division in boxing is being held up by Devin Haney, by Ryan Garcia, by Teo Lopez, etc., deciding that they're going to all call each other out, not fight each other. So then they're given extensions by governing bodies, etc., etc. And Jack Catterall is the victim of that. The IBF belt is a separate entity. The fact that that's now with Richardson Hitchens after being with Paro, etc., sort of stands out on its own. But the reality is, Jack decided that he wanted to go down the WBO route. Eddie gave him an option for the Jorge Linares fight. Or do you want to go down the IBF route and be in line for Matthias, who it was at the time? Or do you want to move towards one of the other governing bodies? And Jack made the call to go for the number one ranking with the WBO. So you've then got to flip back on it. Whilst I agree with what you're saying, he's gone for the WBO route because the champion's Teo Lopez and it's the most money. But should he have said, no, put me in the position for the IBF because that's the fight that I'm probably going to get sooner. It's the more winnable fight. And it gives him a world title. So yes, the promoters have failed him. But when Jack had that judgment call to make before the Linares fight, he chose to go this way instead of taking the potentially, yes, less money, but more direct route to a world title. And now he's completely frozen.
Frozen. Yeah. Yeah, you're right, mate. Oh, it's just a huff and a puff in it with Jack. It really is. But let's move on to somebody who wasn't a huff and a puff at the weekend. Rhys Bellotti. I don't know if this guy was just had a... I think, was it 2018 and 2021? He lost 5 fights in 7. Is he on an Indian summer now? I mean, Dave, you crack in with this one. I mean, on Saturday night, I didn't realise the levels between British level and English level was that fucking big. I know there was narrative there was beef there. I didn't give Michael Gomez Jr. a round. No. Rhys Bellotti was fantastic. I predicted him to get the win. That was just to go against you because it was a hard one to kind of to toss up, really. Yeah. But Rhys Bellotti, fair play to him, mate. We spoke about earlier, didn't we? Well, I kind of made the reference of protecting the O and navigating your way, or your management or promotional team navigating you down a way that you don't lose the O. Rhys Bellotti's gone and lost 5 and 7, rebuilt his career, and now he's a British champion. I mean, he's looking to stiff to European champion, and obviously fringe world level at the later stage of his career. Fair play to him, but it was a bit of a demolition job, boys, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Michael Gomez Jr. just poured forward, and Rhys Bellotti was quite happy to slip under and just bludgeoned him to the body. I mean, it was. You're right. For me, he didn't win a round, but showed some heart. Michael Gomez Jr. poured forward, played into Rhys Bellotti's hands, really. Again, we talk about changing things up and doing things differently. He came straight out of the traps, went straight at Bellotti, as Bellotti expected, and just worked his body. Showed a little bit of inexperience for me, Michael Gomez Jr., which can happen when you're stepping up from English to British. It is a big jump, as we found out on Saturday night. But it showed a little bit of inexperience there. What he should have done is, slowed it down. Don't pour forward. Yes, you've got to have some sort of pressure, but try and box for a few rounds, because he just done the same thing, and Rhys Bellotti just worked him out. The stoppage, the corner pulled it. Yes, there was no way he was going to win, but Rhys Bellotti was tiring in them last rounds. As much as Michael Gomez Jr. Didn't win a round and poured forward, his pressure was tiring out Rhys Bellotti. Now, it would have been one of the comebacks of all time if Michael Gomez could have done anything late. But
Conor Walker moment, you mean?
It could have been a Conor Walker moment, yeah. But it was, But Rhys Bellotti, he carries some power as well. That's Michael Gomez Jr.'s problem as well. He was the bigger lad, he's got a very good engine, but he didn't earn the respect of Rhys Bellotti. And Rhys Bellotti does carry power at that weight, and the body shots were sickening. Again, Michael Gomez Jr. will learn a hell of a lot from this fight in his career. I really do think he will learn from it, and Rhys Bellotti moves on. But I did think it would be more competitive, but again, there was no change in tactics for me for Michael Gomez Jr. There's a time and a place to pour forward, and that tactic wasn't working from the first round. For me, he should have tried to box at range. and and try and walk Bellotti onto something. But the pouring forward just played into Bellotti's hands, and Bellotti just he couldn't miss to the body, dropped him numerous times, and then his corner pulled him out. I think round 9 or round 10. It was one of them.
You agree, Liam?
I mean, you just going back quickly, mate. You mentioned where he was at the fight camp in Eddie's back garden in 2021 when Ray Ford beat him. That was 4 fights in 5 he'd lost, and he lost to Ryan Walsh, Ray Ford, Jordan Gill, and a Frenchman, Francesco Grandala, across 10 rounds out in France, which he probably wasn't expected to lose. And at that point, if Reece Bellotti came out and retired, none of us really would have been surprised. But he took himself away down the right route. He took himself back onto the small hall shows. He picks up his Southern Area title. Got dropped by Matchroom. Went down back onto the small hall shows. Picks up his Southern Area title. Then got an opportunity from Matchroom as the B side against Aqib Fires for the English title. Took that on before the bell, but not even on the main TV broadcast. Was happy to done that. Caused an upset. Then was offered Liam Dillon for the British and Commonwealth, again as the B-side, again as not signed again by Matchroom, and put on a hell of a fight against Dillon. And yes, he won it handsomely, but that was one of the domestic fights in last year because Liam Dillon was competitive. Even though he lost the majority of the rounds, he was competitive. Beat Levi Giles in his first defence pretty comfortably. And he was all set to have his third fight, wasn't he, in October on the Castle Prograis card. And then Gomez fell ill on fight night.
Yeah.
And he gave that horrendous interview. I think the Zone regretted giving him his microphone where every other
I thought it was brilliant. I thought
it was brilliant, but you could just imagine the producer in Addy's ear going, right, we need to stop this now. He just completely lost his head. And at the start of fight week, I was worried about him, thinking, if he's kept himself pent up since October, this could play into Gomez's hands. That's the fight week events went on. It was Gomez Jr. that looked rattled. It was Gomez that was chirping at the face-offs, that was wasting energy, talking too much. And I went from my prediction of being a Reece Bellotti on points to a Reece Bellotti stoppage, just based off of what I saw in the week. And look, it was a fantastic performance. That is how a British champion defends his belt against supposedly the next fighter off the rank, because English title was where Gomez Jr. was at. So he earned himself a British title shot. But that's how you deal with an English champion and say, just because you're an English champion doesn't mean you're ready to step up to this. I mean, it was clinical. It was Reece Bellotti's moved away from the bomber tag in the last couple of years, in the sense that he's looked to win fights by boxing rather than just blowing opponents out of there. And although he was tiring, like you said, Dave, he was actually mixing boxing in with the heavy power shots. So every time that Gomez thought he was taking a respite from the bombardment of hooks and uppercuts, he was getting peppered with jabs and little touches to the body, and he never got any respite. So even if he wasn't hurt and felt he had some offensive output left, Gomez, Bellotti didn't let him rest. He was sitting on his chest all night and stayed there. And it was an impressive performance.
It was.
Look, Eddie had promised him 4 years ago that if you carry on the run he was on prior to those 4 losses, I'll get you a fight out in America. I'll get you a fringe world level contender. Apparently that offer was made again before the original Gomez fight in October. I hope, not many fighters you want to see go over to America as a B-side and most likely lose. But for wherever Reece Bellotti's been in his career, and if we're realistic what he's got left to achieve, a big payday on a Matchroom USA show out in America, I wouldn't begrudge him at all. He more than deserves it for his resurgence in his career.
Yeah, fair play to him. Fair play to him. Just quickly, we didn't preview and predict these last couple of fights, but just briefly go over them. Jazza Dickens, boys, was that a 33-year-old Jazza Dickens that's got the 2.0 version now, or was it a Zelfa Barrett doing 2 steps forward, 3 steps back? Again, another fight that we didn't predict, but I, as a betting man, going to the bookies, my accumulator would be fucked, because going off the back of the Jordan Gill fight, 100% I would have said Zelfa Barrett would have, outboxed him and possibly stopped him late. Jazza Dickens, that again, amazing. Was that the best performance of his career? Fucking hell! I couldn't believe what I was watching. Angles, footwork, counter punching. Zelfa Barrett is just turned up in the end. It was sort of bamboozled by that style. No homework done whatsoever. It looked like the homework had been done by Jazza Dickens lads.
It was almost like Zelfa Barrett had never boxed a southpaw in his life.
Yeah.
He honestly, I mean, as good as Jazza Dickens was, and he was, his movement was superb. I was watching it. It was a wow factor performance. It really was. But Zelfa Barrett played his part as well because he was swinging and missing his foot. He couldn't get his footwork into position to get his foot on the outside as he would with a southpaw, and was made to miss and made to look bang average. He really was. And I'm pleased with Jazza Dickens. He's a likable guy, a likable fighter, and that was a really good performance that was on Saturday night. Wouldn't say shocked, but shocked because Jazza Dickens does have performances like that in him, but I wasn't expecting that with Zelfa Barrett. Zelfa Barrett did come off a good win, like you said there, Dave, and and for me, he was the favourite going into this fight, but he like I say, it looked like he'd never boxed a southpaw in his life. The way he approached the fight, it was no sort of game plan there. No, it looked like he hadn't worked on anything. So it was an awful performance with Zelfa Barrett for me.
Yeah, look, and again, I'm going to say something I talked about last week, and you can find all the receipts over in SW Fight Hub. I can promise everything will be backed up. I said last week that Zelfa Barrett should win this fight because of where the two men are in their career. Yeah. But if he hasn't taken Jazza Dickens seriously, if he's taken his eye off the ball, if he's looking ahead to potentially a bigger fight later in the year, Jazza will make it a hard night's work for him and potentially beat him. And that's what it looked like. Zelfa Barrett almost looked like he thought, all I've got to do is turn up, put in a performance, and it will be enough to deal with Jazza Dickens. The reality is, Zelfa looks as if he'd only started training a couple of weeks ago, and Jazza had lived and breathed it, and done the hard yards over Christmas and New Year. That's how that fight looks. Look, Jazza's been there, done it. He's got the T-shirt. The fact he's only 32 years old, you need to, remind yourself sometimes, because he's lived a career of a boxer that you would think is closer to 40 with who he's been in, with what he's done. Is it a career best performance? I think he'll regard it as one because he knows how much of an underdog he was. He's under no illusions why Matchroom brought him in. They brought him in as name value for Zelfa Barrett because they thought he didn't have anything left. He's now ripped up that script. Whatever was planned for Zelfa Barrett now needs to be given to Jazza Dickens. And if I'm Zelfa Barrett, if I'm his dad, Pat, I'm wondering what the hell to do with him because he delivers performances like he does against Jordan Gill and Rakhmonov. I know he lost that night out in Abu Dhabi, but he dropped Rakhmonov and looked like after 7 rounds he was going to win the fight and pick up the world title at the time. And then he delivers performances like this, and there's no in between. He's either
start Liam. He quite stop for me, Zelfa Barrett, a bit like Riakporhe. 2 steps forward, 3 steps back with them.
Yeah, he's either hot as fuck and looks amazing, or you're wondering, if you go to the arena, why have I spent 50, 60 quid to watch Zelfa Barrett? What the hell is this? So he's got a long way. If he wants to come back, I think he needs to strip it right back down to British title level, which, if he feels it's beneath him, we'll say everything about how he values himself and how serious he actually is. But he needs to go back down to British Commonwealth level and try and build himself back up, because that was one of the worst performances of Zelfa Barrett's career. It's a strong way to word it, but that's what that was, because Jazza, 98-92, I think, was the widest scorecard. There's an argument you could have given it. There's an argument you could have given every round to Jazza, and that's that's the reality. You could argue every round for Jazza Dickens, and 100 to 90 wouldn't look that out of place at all with how that fight went.
No.
It was the manner of the defeat as well. Yeah, it wasn't like he'd been absolutely battered, but he'd absolutely outboxed, absolutely outfought, thinking wise, and made to look amateurish. Some of the shots that he was missing and made to miss was schoolboy for me. It was really bad in the way that Zelfa Barrett approached it. Again, I don't want to take anything away from Jazza Dickens because his movement was amazing. His shot selection was amazing. And like you said there, he looked like he was well prepared for this fight, and he got his just desserts. That's the way it should be. But I'm with you, Zelfa Barrett. He needs to look at what he really wants to do here, because it was again, we talk about opportunities missed. This was opportunities missed here, and you said there, Jazza Dickens was brought in as an opponent. But he's ripped the script up now, and it's like, again, it's the manner of defeat that he was made to look really amateurish for me.
Yeah, he was. He definitely ripped up the script, mate. Liam, Pat McCormack, is it time for the British Board of Boxing Control to mandate him to fight Conor Walker for the British title and then move on? How long we have to wait with this guy? Because again, I don't like to call retirement for people, but Robbie Davies Jr. is now getting tagged too often and he's going down too often. But Pat McCormack looks shit up, and we need to not rush him through, but we need to. I think he's ready for British level now, and then we'll start talking European. But again, fantastic performance on Pat McCormack on Saturday night, mate.
We do need to rush Pat McCormack through. He's 29 years old. He's 4 years removed from winning silver at the delayed Tokyo Olympics. That was only his 7th fight because he took a year to decide he wanted to turn pro because he had issues outside of the ring connected to his family. We do need to rush him through. The British title by the summer is the bare minimum that should be happening. Whether it's ordered by the border control or whether Matchroom say to Conor Walker, this is what your first fight of your new contract with us is. I don't care. It has to happen. And he needs to be challenging for a European belt before the end of this year. And you can think you're rushing him through, but the reality is Pat McCormack has all the skills, has all the talent, and has all the attributes to be a world champion. But he's 29 years old, like I've just said. I think he's 30 in June or July. So by the end of this year, he's already 30. We know in the lower weight classes, it's not like cruiserweight and heavyweight where you can have your better years towards the back end of your 30s. By 34, 35, you're starting to fall off the mountain. He needs to get moving now. He's in the best gym he can be in with Ben Davidson and that team who are doing fantastic things with a number of fighters. It was a red-hot performance. It's the performance I wanted to see from him. Robbie Davies Jr., we knew was on his way down the hill. Ant Croller's compassion and the way he dealt with pulling him out of that fight says a lot about Ant Croller and was handled first class. No complaints from Robbie. If you read his social media post, he's not said the words "I'm retired," but he's done, isn't he?
Yeah, if you read between the lines, he is. Yeah, if you read between the lines, it looks like he's done. Yeah,
that's the performance I wanted to see from Pat McCormack. And if you can't get him Lewis Crocker because Lewis is injured or the boards won't mandate it or whatever, then push on past British level and go to the European title. I'm not a fan of bypassing the British title for fighters, but in this position, you can't allow him to go back to fighting a 26-5 South American opponent later this year just to give him a fight. He either pushes on for British or you move him past that because time is ticking with Pat McCormack and he can be seriously exciting over the next 4 or 5 years if he keeps moving in the direction we want him to.
I didn't realise he was 29. That's amazing. He seems like he hasn't been around for that long. Clearly, he's coming into the pro game late and he says it was 7 or 8 fights, but I was, without looking at BoxRec, I assumed he was about 22, 23. So yeah, I sort of, you are right. He probably does need to be rushed through now. Just lastly,
the same, mate. Sorry, mate. Luke's the same. Luke is 26 or 27. There's not much, they both need to move on. Luke's had the issues with the medicals, which is why he's only had 3 fights, but they're both with Ben Davidson. They're both impressive. They both need a big year this year. And Pat's had his start. Luke, I wanted to see Luke out on one of the early shows Queensberry had this year. We haven't heard any announcements yet. He's not on the first wave of the zone cards either by the looks of it. This is about Pat, I know, but I want to see Luke push through as well because you've got 2 brothers there for Northeast boxing. That's how you get the big nights back in Newcastle and Sunderland and surrounding areas. These 2 brothers can do it.
Yeah. Dave, anything to add with Pat McCormack before we touch on William Croller?
I agree with everything you're supposed to say, but I liked what he done in the fight. It was basics. It was just the fundamentals. The straight 1-2 couldn't miss, and that's what I liked about him. He kept it simple. It wasn't no razzmatazz. No, he found something that was working, and then he broke his opponent down. And again, Robbie Davies Jr. was too brave for his own good. And you touched on anti-Croller there. That's doing the rounds, and so it should. Because that was top class corner work there. Explain to him, listen, you've got 3 more minutes to show me something. I can't see you get hurt. You're a friend of mine, blah, blah, blah. And that was great. That was, and that's what's great about the sport is that you go out there to it's a hurt business, but there is compassion there. And we've seen so many times where corners just don't read the signs and send their fighter back out, and something tragic happens. So all round it was great. But Pat McCormack, I just like the basics. It was just a straight 1-2. There was, go in there, do a job, do fundamentals, do the basics, and leave. And I like that. It was a nice, calm, measured performance. And I'm with you guys. Big things for him. Time isn't on his side. I'm with you. He's got to push on. He's got all the skills and all the class to go on and do great things.
And what about William Croller? 7-0 now, 6 knockouts, southpaw, spiteful, exciting. He's definitely turned my head.
Yeah, look, the William Crawler story is another one that you just love in British boxing. So Anthony Crawler's brother, as everyone will know, decided he wanted to be, get into the gym at 15, done it for a couple of years, fell out of love with it, fell in love with the drink and with, going out and having fun, ballooned up to about 17 stone, got back into the gym with Ant, lost the weight, decided he didn't want to do it again, came away, went back to Ant, and Ant said to him, you either do this properly this time or I'm never allowing you in the gym again. And that was 2.5 years ago. And now he's 7-0, 6 first-round knockouts, 6 knockouts, 5 in the first round, like you just said, Dave. And he's moving the right way. Look, let's not get carried away. He hasn't had an opponent with a winning record yet. However, for someone, again, that doesn't have a lot of amateur experience, William does have amateur experience, but he never went to an Olympic Games or a Commonwealth Games, etc. They need to step him up now. The talk is a central area title towards the end of this year, and I think that's the right steps for him.
Yeah.
Now, you've seen what he can do on this lower level. He's a ticket seller. Jay was telling me that he sold about 300 tickets for this card, which is fantastic. Really good that he's selling the tickets when he's on at 5:30 in the afternoon as a curtain jerker before the main card gets going. So now let's see him push towards the central area title and see what he can do. A lot of people were making comparisons between him and Campbell Hatton. And I say the big difference is, yes, they're both, they've got family members that have achieved huge things in the sport, but William actually did have an amateur record. He won a local, he was a local ABA champion. He just never made the step towards the GB team and get into Commonwealth, Olympic Games, etc. So unlike Campbell, he did have an amateur record. He's just taken a bit longer to decide he wants to be in the game, and now he's in it. Fuck me, is he in it? Because he's making everyone take notice, isn't he?
Yeah, and he's doing all the right things. Like I say, you nailed it there with his opponents. It's very easy to get carried away, but listen, keep your feet on the ground and build him in the right way. And that's what's happening. And he's doing what he should do to that level opponent at this stage of his career. And he's putting his name out there. He's selling himself very well. Like you said, he's a good ticket seller, so he's doing everything right. And like you say, and you're totally correct there, moving him in the right direction, just like an area title, then an English title, and moving him correctly. But in the meantime, he's building a good following. He's getting his viral moments. And he's putting his name out there. So building him the right way. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what he does next.
I've not sometimes because of work and getting ready for work and kids and whatnot. I don't always get to see the early prelims of a card, but now he's caught my eye. I will go out my way to watch him, and that's his style, the way he's getting rid of opponents. It's that's the way you get people's styles make fights, and how you come across. It's what I said about Xander's eyes a bit earlier. Completely different sort of style, I know, because he's moving up the levels and things like that. But I like what I saw on Saturday night with William Crawler. First time I've actually watched him properly, even though it was only for one round. So fair play to him. And lastly, guys, over in California, early hours of Sunday morning, Oscar Duarte was in action. He was supposed to be fighting Regis Prograis. Prograis had a shoulder injury. So Miguel Madueno stepped in, tough Mexican. Oscar finds these Mexicans. Never heard of him, to be honest. The guru over there, Mr. Liam Tully, he'll know a lot more about him. Had a nose at his record, 28 knockouts in 31 fights. So he definitely could bang. And probably, boys, this could have been the fight of the weekend. 2 Mexicans going at it, rock'em sock'em. Both throwing big, high-volume punches. Never been stopped, Madueno. Duarte got the stoppage. Highly impressed with him. We've seen Duarte in the past. He was out boxing Ryan Garcia. Garcia landed that big left trademark hook, what he does. But, mate, this guy's a contender, Oscar Duarte is definitely a contender in this division. I've got to admit, I do like that style of him. Yes, he's easy to hit. He'll take 2 or 3 to land 2 or 3, but then he'll take 2 or 3 and he'll land 6 or 7 of his own. Again, front-footed, exciting fighter. I thoroughly enjoyed the fight. I actually think, Liam, and you, Dave, obviously, I think the fight with Madueno at the weekend possibly worked out a better edge of your seat sort of fight than the Prograis fight would have been originally. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, it probably did work out as a better fight, but...
Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy the fight?
I enjoyed the fight, but who cares about Oscar Duarte? And that sounds a really harsh thing to say, but the reality is we've already spoken on this tonight about Golden Boy protecting fighters and building up records. I know he's got a loss to Ryan Garcia, but at the time that was a in-house Golden Boy fight. Who actually cares about Oscar Duarte? Who actually knows about Oscar Duarte outside of his fan base and his team and the boxing hardcore? This is an exciting talent that should be known around the world, who people should be wanting to see fight, but no one really cares about him. And it's nothing to do with his style and everything to do with the way he looks after. Yes, that was a very exciting fight, which I caught up with yesterday afternoon. And he really delivered, and it was another good performance. First stoppage of his opponent, fantastic. But Oscar Duarte will probably fight in October. It will be another fight similar to this. And again, it will be, right, who actually cares? What are you trying to achieve with Oscar Duarte? And that is how I feel about him. He's a talented fighter, but in such a saturated market, he needs to grab my attention. He needs to be being pushed out there, and that's not happening.
Are you blaming Golden Boy for that?
Yeah.
Because obviously the attention-wise, the way he fights, it does grab your attention, doesn't it? You know,
the blame's fully on Golden Boy. The blame is William Zepeda is another fighter. I mean, he's rematching Tevin Farmer for whatever that's worth, but that's another Golden Boy fighter that has the potential to carry that promotion and to be a big name, but he's not known about outside of his native country in the boxing hardcore. And that is when you're 21-0 or whatever Zepeda is, and similar for Duarte, that isn't how it should be. You should have a reputation around the world. That's how you get these world title opportunities. It shouldn't be the way it is, but that's how it is. And Duarte is the king of the Who Needs Him club. He'd be lucky to probably fight, get a rematch against Ryan Garcia if he was to lose, to Devin Haney in the rematch. That's the sort of area he's in. But even then, he'd be the B-side and people would still ask who he is. There's just not enough being done. And yes, an exciting fight, but look, I reckon in the UK, if that done 200 people watching it live, that card, I don't think that's under. But that's the reality.
You're right. That's I'm laughing. Yeah.
Whereas I reckon more people stayed up and watched Keyshawn on the night before. Yes, it's on Sky, so it's slightly more accessible. But my point is, he's not being built up. He's being protected and kept in-house. And one day Oscar's going to have to set him free and see what he can do. And the chances are he'll get exposed. He's in these type of matches against opponents where he may have wars because of how easy he is to hit, but ultimately he always should be winning the fights because he's a level, maybe even in some cases 2 levels above the opponents. That's the reality.
Yeah, no, I feel the same. It's what is what are they trying to achieve and what are they trying to build? You can't see a plan there. You can't see a route that they're trying to put him down. Now you're right there. With a certain type of opponent, he's going to be in exciting fights. He really for the way he fights. But for me, he's beatable, and I believe that when you're talking about the champions, the fundamentals and the way people box, I think he can be outboxed. But I'm with you. Like I say, Oscar De La Hoya is all about himself. We talk about his clapback Thursdays, but it's all about him. But he, where's his fighters? I say, where's the promotion? Where you don't see Oscar screaming about his fighters, and you don't. You got Ryan Garcia when before the Devin Haney fight, it was all about Ryan Garcia, but you don't. I'm with you. Where they trying to navigate Duarte? All of a sudden he was going in with Regis Prograis out of nowhere. His name come out after he fought Ryan Garcia, but I just don't see the plan with him. I don't see the route with him on what they're trying to do with him. So I'm with you. It's a strange one for me.
He's 29 years old. I've just checked. He's 29 years old. It's almost as if you can miss an Oscar Duarte fight if you didn't have your ear to the ground or paying attention to it. Don't get me wrong. The Regis Prograis fight had my attention. I wanted to see A, what Prograis has left, and B, is Duarte, what we think he is. And if he beat Regis Prograis, I'd be paying more attention. Yes, I'd still be saying, who cares? Because, the optics are not a lot of people have eyeballs on him. Yeah. But that Prograis victory, if it came, would have been a statement. Beating this guy just carries on the run of form. I've just looked at his record. Joseph Diaz is probably the best victory he's got on his record, and that was just after the Garcia fight. When he had that fight after losing to Garcia, it looked like they were going to make the right moves. And now we're back in this vicious cycle of who can Oscar get in for the least money that's not really a threat to my fighters so they can pad their records. Jaime Munguia is a prime example. I know he's not with Golden Boy anymore, and he's obviously came unstuck in December, but Jaime Munguia was built up to 44-0. His best win on there was Liam Smith. That says it all, really. Oscar's very good at looking after number one, and that's not the fighter, that's Oscar De La Hoya. That's what he does best.
Yeah. There you go, guys. See, we brought Liam on for a reason. First time I've ever heard somebody say we don't care about the fighter. And you know what? You're bang on. You are right, mate. You're right what you're saying about Golden Boy and Duarte. It is a shame. It is a shame. But it'd be interesting to see what he does with him next. Probably pad his record out to Jaime Munguia, like you say, at 40-0. But yeah, for what it was worth, the fight was good. It was entertaining. I do wish I stopped up to watch it now. But you're all right. There was probably a handful of people in the UK that stayed up to watch that. So before we move on to our preview and predictions for the biggest card ever in our lifetime, just your performance of the week, guys. We normally do a performance of the week. Out of all those fights we've reviewed, should I say, what was your favourite of the weekend?
My favourite is Jazza Dickens. I thought that was a great performance. Obviously, Delva Barrett played his part, but yeah, for me, I enjoyed seeing Jazza Dickens roll back the years, because, like I say, he was thrown in there as the underdog, and then all of a sudden he's pulled off a performance like that. So that's my performance.
Yeah, look, I was going to go with Jazza as well, but I'll pick a different fighter. I'll go with Ruiz Belotti, because yes, I expected him to beat Gomez Jr., but I thought it would be a war, and it would be who's got more left in the tank. That was a systematic beatdown from the first minute till the towel was thrown in. It was highly impressive from Ruiz Belotti.
Yeah, I was going to go Jazza as well. So I'll go with someone different. I'll just go for Abdullah Mason, because I just love Abdullah Mason. So yeah, good performances from most people there. I tell you who it wouldn't have been was Jared Anderson. That's for that's a bloody cert. So yeah, fantastic boxing from the weekend. And let's crack into this weekend coming. Saturday, the 22nd of February, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. The best fight card, as I've said, and Liam said it on his podcast, and everyone's saying it. It's getting a bit boring, but it's exciting at the same time. We've never seen a card like this. 7 main events on one card. 50-50 fights, majority of them. I'll probably say, you guys know which one. Probably there's one there. It's a 60-40, 70-30, whichever, whoever's camp you're in at the time. But I can't wait. And the question I want to ask you guys is, well, 2 questions. How excited are you? And the second question is, have you paid your £20 subscription fee to DAZN yet? Pay-per-view fee, should I say?
I'll let you go, Liam.
How excited am I? I am absolutely buzzing. It's Monday, and I wish it was Saturday already. I mean, Sam J and myself done our predictions for Beterbiev, Bivol, and Dubois Parker last night, and that set me off. I had to watch the first fight between those two back in Dubois' last couple of fights. Like, that set me off with my excitement levels. It's a hell of a card. Look, I'm not gonna become another person waxing lyrical and almost sucking turkey off for how amazing he's made this card, getting nicked in his country for that. But anyway, it's an incredible card. It's great fighters. They could all be main events in their own right, absolutely. But let's break them down as the fights they are. Have I paid my 20 quid to DAZN yet? No, because I'm not sure where I'm going to be watching it. I may not be at mine, so someone else may be paying it for me. That's the answer. But I will do by the end of the week. Absolutely. You can't not want to be a part of this fight card. The fact that you've got Buatsi and Callum Smith as the first fight at probably about 5:30 in the UK. I mean, yeah, it's just incredible. It's fantastic.
Yeah, no, I mean, how can you not be excited for this card? I mean, it's a fantastic card. The fights all the way through it are just like a show stealers for me. They could headline any sort of show. So I can't wait. And I'm with you. I'm 5:30. I'm going to be there ready to go. I haven't paid my subscription yet. I'm getting I tend to just pick it more or less on the day and go from there. But I honestly can't wait. I honestly cannot wait. And there's going to be some brilliant moments. There's going to be some shocks, I believe, and so I just can't wait, man. Brilliant.
What you mean is, if you're
30.
Go on.
So at 5:30, I'm going to be split screening it. So rugby is my sport I played as a kid, is my main passion. I'm going to have the England-Scotland game on before I can. The boys are like, we're doing a watch-along from 5:30. I was like, I cannot watch the England game before I come on a watch-along. So I have the Callum Smith fight on the laptop and the rugby on the TV. And that'll probably decide my mood for the evening as well, depending on how England get on. But it's just fantastic, isn't it? I mean, how often when a fight card's on do you want to be there in your seat for the first fight? I mean, I was lucky enough to go to the Dubois AJ fight at Wembley, and that fight card, I missed the Mark Chamberlain fight mainly because I couldn't convince my missus to get to Wembley that early. But I was in my seat for the rest of the night, And that's how this fight card feels as well. Every single fight, you don't want to miss a second of it because you don't know what's going to happen because they're well matched as well. It's not as if they stack the card with A sides and then the B sides are crap. No. These are genuine toss a coin, see which way it lands for the fight. It's fantastic. Sorry, Dave. I'll let you get back into what you were saying.
No, I was just to say, go on, Dave.
So I went as well. I went AJ fight, and I was on the way to the Mark Chamberlain fight, but my fucking train station was closed. I ended up on a bus, so I got there just after it finished. But again, that was a great night. I was in the highest seat that you could ever have in Wembley, but I was there, so it was great.
Yeah, and I was at work. No, I was in my armchair watching it actually then, and I went to work and watched it on the shelf. So normally when I can't get a stream at work, I do jump over to the SW Fight Hub with Liam and Jay and Sam. Good non-biased commentary of all the fights, which I do appreciate. But I will be watching this one. I've paid my £20 a zone fee. I was going to say there earlier, Dave. It's whether your Fire Stick's working or not, isn't it?
Yeah, it depends, yeah.
But we're jumping, as Liam said there, Joshua Buatsi, Callum Smith walking first, either in Saudi. Let's hope there's a bit more atmosphere for this fight. But there again, I don't care. I was a fan of Eddie's back garden fights. I just want to see him fight in the ring. The atmosphere is an added bonus. 50-50 here, guys. The first 50-50 of the night. Joshua Buatsi, the Olympic medalist, unbeaten as a pro. Bit of a slow start in his professional career. Last two fights, Dan Aziz, which Dave went to that fight, kind of carried him. And Willie Hutchinson, who I became an overnight fan. I backed Hutchinson. Dan and Joshua Buatsi did show that he was a level above. So he is coming into his own, in my opinion. And obviously, Callum Smith, former world champion at 168, only losses to Canelo and Beterbiev. More experience, better resume, hits like fuck. Lads, I can't split these. I can't. Again, this is what we want. We boxing fans say it all the time, and it's not a cliche. When you get 50-50 fights, when you can't pick red corner to beat blue corner, this is what we want, because when we can't pick them, we know it's going to be a good fight. And I'm to this second here, boys, I can't even pick yet. I haven't made my decision. So how are you two seeing this one?
So look, I was the same as Dave. I was at both of Buatsi's fights last year. I was at Wembley Arena in February for the Aziz fight, and I was in the stadium for the Hutchinson fight. And look, Joshua Buatsi, just business. That's what his moniker is. And let's be really honest, he always is just business when it gets to fight week. I love the fact that the hair and the beard stay until after he's weighed in. Then you see him on fight night, and it's the completely business style look. I've always liked that about him. I may not have always liked the way he's gone about his career and how he's been maneuvered. I've questioned the move to boxer. I mean, let's put it really openly for how it is.
Sorry, Liam, I don't think Matcham done great for him either, if I'm totally honest.
No. I was just about to follow that up, but I will also caveat this with saying I believe that Riyadh season are the only reason Buatsi's having these two fights. If he was just boxer on Sky, I'd be questioning massively where he was going to end up. That's the reality. I actually went, my initial uni I went to back 8 years ago was St. Mary's, which is where Joshua Buatsi was. And when he came back from the Olympics, he came back to do his third year at uni. And he was always on the running track, always training. Whilst finishing his history degree, he done his initial promo shoot with Matchroom on the running track at the uni. And he was always around, but you could always see that he had a focus on life beyond boxing. I just feel with him, look, the Rio Olympics was 9 years ago now. He won his bronze medal there, and you're still waiting.
Yeah,
he's WBO. He's a WBO interim world championship now for the bollocks that 3%'s worth when the real belt's in the main event. I mean, whatever. But this is it now. Willie Hutchinson was one of the few times in his career where he's been an underdog with some people. For me, I thought he was make Willie Hutchinson pay for his words in the build-up and he dominate him. And that is ultimately how that fight turned out. He done the performance I hoped he would do. He showed a step up from Dan Aziz where he decided to carry his mate for the last 4 rounds rather than putting his foot down and finishing him. On the flip side of that, you got Callum Smith, who, when he beat George Groves, was the best 168-pound fighter in the world. And he held that title for a good year and a bit. Yes, he was lucky against John Ryder that night at the Echo. And
definitely,
you know, if that fight was in London and different things, he may have lost that night. But the reality is it was a W on his record. Against Canelo, he took the Canelo fight at 4.5 weeks' notice in COVID times when you couldn't get sparring partners in, where he had to jump through all these hoops just to have a fight. You know, all the odds stacked against him. and he still went in there. And yes, he was handsomely beaten, but he wasn't stopped, and he never stopped trying. Beterbiev showed the level that Beterbiev is at.
Yeah.
So it's a question mark in this fight. If I like Callum Smith, I can see a path to him winning.
There's a buck coming here.
What his heart has.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I agree with a lot of what you say there, but you know, the Callum Smith of the super middleweight era, it hasn't for me gone up and done the same at light heavy. He's not this. I mean, I know there's factors in that. Obviously, there's the caliber of fight. You just mentioned the Beterbiev and Canelo and etc. But you know, he was what he was at super middleweight. I don't feel that's transferred into that now. There could be factors in that. He was always a big super middleweight anyway, and he was always going to move up to light heavy. But I don't feel that, you know, he was basically he was a monster, you know, a destructive monster at super middleweight. That hasn't carried up for me. And obviously there's factors in that, you know, like you said, there's COVID and, you know, but, you know, he's gone in with 2 Hall of Famers in Beterbiev and Canelo. So yes, does that play a factor? For me, going into the fight, I'm a fan of Joshua Buatsi. You know, again, I spoke about it earlier about doing the basics and doing the fundamentals very well, and that's what he does. And again, when he's looking at previous opponents, Callum Smith's been in with a better opponent, I have to admit. But I think it's going to be a mega performance from Buatsi on Saturday night. I don't know what Callum. I'm a little bit concerned about what Callum Smith's got left. You mentioned it earlier about whether he's got the heart for it anymore. I think we're going to find out once and for all on Saturday night whether he has or not. And unfortunately for me, we're going to find out that he doesn't. I'm going to go for Buatsi to win on points for me.
Liam?
Despite what I've said, and as big a fan as I am of Buatsi, I think Callum Smith still has that one night and that one fight in him. I do, you know, Callum Smith had long enough out of the ring after the Beterbiev fight to decide if he wanted to carry on or not. So he's made a conscious decision to put himself back in the firing line, hasn't he? If he didn't have anything left, he would have retired after that night in Quebec last January. He's got one big performance left, I think. And for me, I see him edging a points decision victory. So I'm going for Callum Smith. I just think something in me is telling me that he's going to stick it on Buatsi. And Buatsi, we've seen, doesn't always deal with it well. And Callum's not going to let him off the hook like we've seen other fighters do with Buatsi.
I agree with what you're saying there. I agree. For Callum Smith to win, he needs to go on the front foot. It's just whether he will or not. That's what I'm concerned. It's his tactics for me as how he's going to approach this fight that makes me lean towards a Buatsi points win. But again, you know, it could go anyway, which makes this card amazing.
Yeah, I can see both your guys what you're saying there because it's so close. It's such a close fight. I can see either scenario happening. Willie Hutchinson fight. I was impressed with Buatsi's chin because Hutchinson did have success in, you know, pockets of success in rounds. You know, just because I'm a fan of him and I'm trying to find reasons for him to win rounds, he did have success. But does Willie Hutchinson hit as hard as Callum Smith? I don't think he does. If Buatsi is comfortable with Callum Smith's power, which I'm not sure he will be, then I could see Josh Buatsi getting into a rhythm and possibly he might even stop Callum Smith late. However, I don't know if he can live with the power. And Callum Smith, again, 50-50 fight. He's not in there as an opponent. He's not in there to survive. He's not in there to make up numbers. He's got one last roll of the dice, as Liam says there. Totally agree. And this could be the night. I reckon he might catch him. And I don't know what round. And I think he's going to have a bit of a stumble, a bit of a wobble. And I can see Callum Smith jumping on him. Callum Smith might even be well beyond on the cards. I can see a knockout. I'm going to go different from you guys. I'm going to go Callum Smith by KO, just a random round 7. I can see not. I don't like using the term "shot from the gods," "gift from the gods," but I can see the power that he's got. A kind of a Ryan Garcia style hook, isn't he, Callum Smith? And when it lands, it's fucking devastating. So yeah, I'm going to go Callum Smith knockout, boys. Yeah, interesting. Another interesting fight, Zhilei Zhang versus Ajit Kabayel. This is for interim WBC, whatever bullshit belt, no one cares. 50-50, yet again. Zhilei Zhang, late, hasn't come onto the scene late, pro-wise he has. Obviously, he was robbed against Hrgovic. It was a robbery, in my opinion. Beat up Joe Joyce. Joe Joyce at the time didn't have to take that fight. He was a juggernaut, was the unstoppable object, you know, beat him twice, stopped him, put him down. Dropped Parker twice, you know, ran out of gas after 5 rounds. and lost that fight, and obviously put pay to Deontay Wilder's second comeback by stopping him. Agit Kabayel, boys, is the perfect example of winner stays on here. Makhmudov, nobody put their hand up to face Makhmudov. I'll have a go. Massive underdog. Worked him out, stopped him. The self-proclaimed boogeyman after Luis Ortiz, Frank Sanchez. No one's putting their hand up to fight Frankie Sanchez. Agit Kabayel, well, winner stays on. I'll have a go. Worked him out, stopped him. This guy is, I think, by boxing fans, is getting really appreciated of his IQ. He's got very good IQ, Agit Kabayel. I think most of us, before he come onto the Riyadh season, we was all kind of thinking him as a good European level fighter, fringe world level fighter, would never do anything against the top 5. Watching this guy, the last 2 fights, boys, and then going back in the archives and watching him, he doesn't come with one game plan. He changes the game plan up 2 or 3 times. And I like that. I like what his corner does. He's doing his business quite quietly, unnoticed. Now he's on the big scene. He's getting noticed. And I'm going to go straight in here before I ask you, boys. Zhilei Zhang, if he doesn't get rid of Agit Kabayel in the first 5 rounds, he gets beat and he possibly gets stopped late. Because you go back and look at Zhilei Zhang's fights, after 5 rounds, he's gassed, he's fucked. He's a lot bigger now than when he fought Jerry Forrest. And he floored Jerry Forrest back in, I think it was 2018, about 3 times, and still got a draw. So how can you floor somebody 3 times over 10 rounds and still get a draw? Because he was shagged, and he weighs about fucking 2 or 3 stone heavier now, and he's 41. So again, intriguing fight. Fighter 2 after this one, boys. Zhilei Zhang to get the job done in the first 5. If he can't, Kabayel works him out, goes to the body, whatever game plan he's got, and he possibly stops Zhilei Zhang. But I don't think he will. So I'm going to go Agit Kabayel to beat Zhilei Zhang on points. Thoughts, boys?
I think you've nailed it there, really. Zhilei Zhang is, yes, he can bang, and he's knocked down every opponent that he's been in with. But his shot selection is very underrated. Like I say, he does walk opponents onto class shots that they don't see coming. He spun Deontay Wilder in a complete 360, and then knocked him out. But that was Deontay Wilder throwing a shot, walking onto one. When he was throwing his own shot. So Agit Kabayel needs to be careful of that. But you had it there. Agit Kabayel's boxing IQ is outstanding for a heavyweight.
I think so, yeah.
I say he came out of nowhere, like you said, there with Makhmudov, but I say systematically broke him down with boxing. Just went straight to the body. You don't see a lot of heavyweights going to the body. He likes a body shot. So yeah, this fight for me, I totally agree with you, Dave. I think if he gets reckless, Kabayel, Zhang has the power to walk you onto one and knock you out. But again, I think Agit Kabayel's. I think he's too shrewd for that, and I think he's going to know that obviously Zhang, it's better to take Zhang late, seeing his age and his size and whatnot, and he's known for gassing late, and I think he's going to be cagey for the first few rounds. Stick to his boxing, be up on points, and I think he's going to coast.
I think he could be the boogeyman in this division. What do you think, Liam? What's your thoughts on Kabayel?
Look, I'm all for him. I mean, before he came onto the Day of Reckoning card and beat Makhmudov, he was best known to us for beating Derek Chisora out in Monaco in an absolute stinker for a European title. I think 8-9 years ago now. Look, he was brought in against Makhmudov. Let's have it right, because he had something about him, but not enough, everyone thought, to get rid of Makhmudov, who was supposed to be this absolute monster who's now lost again subsequently since. And he came through that, and then he got given the Frank Sanchez opportunity, and he done exactly the same thing against Frank Sanchez. I think he's a different breed of heavyweight. He's not as big as the rest of them at the moment in terms of his size, but he packs the same amount of punching power. And the heavyweights, you can see, Frank Sanchez was struggling with having to hit down at a target rather than hit up. And he's able to do his work up close and get his work off in a way that a lot of the bigger boys in this division can't. Flip it onto Zhang. Zhang's best 2 performances of his career came for me against Joe Joyce. I was at the first fight of the Copper Box where he messed up Joe's eye, and, Joe was stopped. Yes, the Wilder KO will always be on his highlight reel, but that's a Deontay Wilder that barely threw a punch across 12 rounds against Joseph Parker and barely threw a punch until he was getting spun around and dropped in the Zhang fight. So if you take the flip side of it, the Joyce victories impressed me more. I do question, though, what does Zhang have if he can't get rid of a fighter like you boys have said? So against Joseph Parker, he had Parker down on the seat of his pants twice, but you can make an argument that Parker won the other 10 rounds of the fight.
Oh, easy,
That's the difference there. Yeah. Joseph Parker boxed all night long, could have stopped Zhang, but listened so well to Andy Lee, which I'll come on to when we talk about him and Dubois, that he stayed and went the distance and was happy to take a points victory. Kabayel, for me, I agree. Zhang needs to stop Kabayel within 4 rounds. But whereas you boys are going for Kabayel on points, I think Kabayel stops Zhang in the second half of the fight. I just think Zhang is going to put so much in to the first half of the fight. We're going to see his legs slow down. He doesn't have a lot of head movement anyway. So when his feet stop moving, he's going to be a lovely target for that massive looping overhand right that Kabayel has. And when it lands on Zhang, once it's landed enough times, Zhang will crumble and he'll fall over. So I'm going to go a Kabayel stoppage in round number 9.
Yeah. It's good when you can see all these outcomes happening, isn't it?
Yeah.
And these 50-50 fights, I can see that happening as well.
You can see Zhang flatlining Kabayel as well. That's the reality. You can literally see any outcomes.
He's got such fast hands for a big lump, 41-year-old. He's a good southpaw, but for me, it's the gas tank. He just kind of empties after 5. So very, very, very intriguing fight. This one intrigues me a lot. This one, boys. Virgil Ortiz Jr. versus Israel Madrimov. It's Eddie versus Oscar. It's already 1-0 to Oscar if you go by the Oscar Barboza Jr. fight from last weekend. This one to me screams of the speed and the output and the power of Virgil Ortiz Jr. against the technical sort of qualities of the Uzbek in Madrimov. I'll see this one, lads. This is another interim belt. Don't really care about the belts, but there is a belt on the line. That's how they're going to sell it to you. When we saw Madrimov against Terence Crawford, you had Eddie Hearn crying and kicking off about the fight. Crawford shouldn't have won, all that rubbish. I disagree. The first 5 rounds, I thought, obviously me and Dave haven't spoke to Liam about it. The first 5 rounds of Crawford versus Madrimov. Madrimov didn't do anything. He bounced up and down on his toes, like in a praying mantis sort of style. Terence Crawford was having a look at him. He was landing, scoring shots. Nothing really happened, but he didn't do anything. Virgil Ortiz Jr. is a completely different fighter. He's a lot more reckless. If he sees a man standing in front of him, he will come forward and he'll throw. He'll take that gamble and he will throw. And if he lands on Madrimov, I don't care how technically good Madrimov is, ex-world champion, sell it to me how you want. If Virgil Ortiz Jr. lands on that motherfucker, he's going down and he possibly stops him. So this is a really intriguing fight. How does Madrimov start the fight, Liam? If he starts standing straight in front of Virgil Ortiz Jr., it's like taking candy off a baby.
I was very, very impressed with Madrimov's performance against Crawford. Let me say, I don't think he won the fight. I think I scored it 115, 113, 116, 112 in Crawford's favour. So I wasn't The second half, I've got to disagree with you there. The second half, I thought you proved, but the first 5 rounds, to me, mate, he didn't do fuck all. I can hear that argument. I'm not saying I gave him a big share of the first half of the fight, but he done enough for me all night long to be in that fight. Enough. I do not agree with Eddie Hearn's calls of robbery in the slightest. It was not a robbery. Crawford won the fight, but Madrimov showed there is a blueprint to struggle Terence Crawford. Yeah. And I'm going to flip that around and say that blueprint that we saw from, say, round 6 onwards against Terence Crawford will work against the Virgil Ortiz Jr. Virgil Ortiz Jr. only knows one gear, and that's come forward and let my hands go.
Bang. Yeah.
Yep. That's all he does. So how does he handle it when he's got a fighter that's going to come and match him on the front foot, that's going to look to get his jab off first and ask questions of his defense? Look, Terence Crawford solved the puzzle, and Terence Crawford is also a much better fighter than Virgil Ortiz Jr. But Madrimov showed how he can fight and what his style is. And I think that's how he starts against Virgil Ortiz. He starts on the front foot. He starts with his jab. He looks to land the work into the body, and he sets the pace all night. I think he would be the first to admit, we probably won't hear it this fight week because English isn't his first language, that he started too slow in the Crawford fight. Slow,
yeah. Agreed.
He cannot do that again. If he sets the pace that he set from round 6 onwards, from round 1 against Ortiz Jr., I question if Ortiz will be able to live with his work rate. There's no denying that Ortiz has the concussive, lights out power, similar to what we just said with the Zhang Kabayel fight. But the work rate and the punch selection and the durability is in Madrimov's favour. And that, for me, is where the balance is in this fight. And I am actually backing Madrimov to win on points. I can see a scenario, again, like we're saying about all these fights, where Ortiz lands that shot and it's over in an instant. But one, we know Madrimov has a tough chin. And 2, we know he comes forward all night long and is relentless when he wants to be. So another great fight. He may get dropped. We may have to see the gut check that we haven't seen from Israel before, but I do believe we'll get a points victory.
Exciting. Go on, Dave.
Yeah, no, this one's a tough one. Like I say, you both broke it down there very well. You can see why both fighters have got a chance to win. You're looking at the power of Virgil Ortiz, but I think that the work rate, and I think he's going to offset Virgil Ortiz and frustrate Virgil. I do think I agree with you. He's going to come out and start the fight quick. I think he needs to. With you, he can't afford to let it go to the second half. I think he's learned. I would have learned his lesson from the Terence Crawford fight for me. And I think he's going to come out and set the pace. And I think he's going to offset Virgil Ortiz every time he tries to throw a shot. He's going to hit him with a sneaky shot, and just have to offset him all the time. And I think that Virgil Ortiz, we talk about rolling the dice. Jack Catch didn't roll the dice. I think Madrimov's going to set off, come out the blocks very fast and build up a points lead. And I think that Virgil Ortiz is the second half of the fight is going to have to roll the dice. And that's where this fight's going to be explosive. Is when Virgil Ortiz is told that he needs to go and get a stoppage. So this is what makes the fight exciting for me. I think Madrimov's going to set the pace. And for me, I'm going to agree with Liam. I think Madrimov's going to do it on points.
Madrimov starts too slow again, gets caught cold and gets stopped early. round 3.
Yeah.
Who knows? I get what Liam's saying, and he's right. I just don't think he starts too early. I think he likes to download. He's like Usyk and Loman. They have a bit of a nosy. They download, they feel the power, then they get into the rhythm. Yes, Terence Crawford was a kind of different example. You go up against an elite fighter, even at another weight, but he runs to the centre of the ring, Ortiz, and he just loves to throw. And it's a gamble as well. Don't get it wrong. Liam's right. Madrimov does like to throw as well. He can trade, but is he going to hook with the hooker? I don't know. I can see him getting caught cold, boys. This was making it so exciting. So yeah, I'm going Ortiz for the KO.
I've just got to say, mate, you go on about Madrimov starting slow. When he won the belt in Saudi last year, that was a 4th round stoppage. So yes, he started slow against Crawford, but he has shown he can start fast and he has shown he's got power. And that was sitting on the back foot counter punching. It was a peach of a left hand, wasn't it? That just stopped his opponent dead in his tracks. So yes, his most recent performance, which is where the recency bias comes in, he starts too slow. But I'm just scrolling through his box rec here. Most of his stoppages come in the first half of fights. So there is something there for him. And maybe the Crawford fight, he showed him too much respect. He didn't know, it's the best opponent he's ever been in with on the biggest stage he's had. And maybe he froze a little bit in those early rounds. And we saw what talent he had by how well he came back into the fight. Yeah.
No, you are right. You're right. But those previous opponents, I was never sold on Kurbanov, but the previous opponents are what we're talking. We're talking Latvian bin men, or
decent enough. A couple of them are, but there's some winning records on there as well.
Yeah, you are right. Very interesting. Again, this is another interesting fight, another 50-50. This is for a proper world title, ladies and gentlemen. The middleweight division, 160 pounds. The WBC belt is on the line. Carlos Adames versus Hamza Shiraz. I think most UK boxing fans have fallen in love with Hamza Shiraz. I know me and Dave definitely have. I don't believe he's the best in the division, because our guy, Yanibek Alim Hanala, is the guy that's been avoided. He's got 2 of the belts, but we don't want to go into a rant about him, because it's not about him this weekend. It's about the guy that's one of the guys that's avoiding him, Carlos Adames. Money's come on the table. Al Heyman's let him fight. Carlos Adames versus Hamza Shiraz. Look, for all how much Hamza Shiraz is improved since that Bradley Skeet fight and what happened there, he's a big lad. He won't be at 160 for too long. He's got the height advantage. He's got the reach. That jab is like a ramrod. It's like a power shot at times. Ammo Williams kind of got round the jab at times, had success, but it wasn't enough. And Tyler Denny was just a complete mismatch. Carlos Adames, the UK fan, hasn't seen, unless you're a hardcore, hasn't seen too much of him. But this is another guy that kind of starts slow, Liam and Dave, gets into a rhythm. When he works you out, it's a hard night's work. This is a harder night's work for Hamza Shiraz than a lot of people are making out. Do not hang your coat on Carlos Adames, because if he does work Hamza Shiraz, if he works him out, boys, and this does go late, I could see him breaking him down and stopping him. And I'm a massive Hamza Shiraz fan. This is, again, 50-50 fights is what we want. I can't sit here and say now, Hamza Shiraz walks in there, works out Carlos Adames just because we haven't seen him a lot, smashes him to pieces, then we go and call out Yanibek. I don't think it's going to go that way. I really don't. It's again, I haven't come to a decision just yet. What are you boys thinking?
Look, do not believe the eyes that Riyadh season has brought onto boxing is fantastic. It's what the sport's been crying out for years. However, the casual audience that's been brought onto it will have you believe that Carlos Adames is nothing more than more than a lightweight world champion, into a lightweight in the sense that he's not got a lot to offer and he's just going to roll over like cannon fodder for Hamza Shiraz.
Not for me.
That is not the case. Yes, he's avoiding Janabek, and Al Heyman's finally let him out of the freezer, defrosted him off and sent him over to Saudi. The reality is he should have been the opponent at Wembley in September, Dave. That was the route it was going down. That was the initial rumour, is it was going to be Hamza Shiraz getting his world title shot. Al Heyman didn't like the money that was put on the table. Surprise, surprise. And we've had to wait till now. But it's a fantastic fight. Look, Hamza Shiraz has stepped up in the right ways. Just his 2024 alone, he stopped Liam Williams inside 2.5 minutes. He came back from down on the scorecards to dominate and eventually stop a very good American in Ammo Williams. You'd expect to come back and be a factor in this division. And yes, he was a completely overmatched Tyler Denny out at Wembley Stadium, but Hamza Shiraz still took care of him inside 6 minutes. Doesn't matter, that fight could have gone deep. It could have gone to the scorecards. It was the emphatic nature in which he dealt with him. So Hamza Shiraz is on the rise. I think it's a ticking time bomb for him at 160 in the sense that he's a bloody big geezer, and how he gets down to 160 but doesn't look like he's killed himself every time he's on the scales really impresses me. But at some point, that's going to catch up with him. It's only a matter of time. So he's not for long at 160. Wouldn't surprise me if he moves on even before the Janabek fight, say, gets spoken about, because I think he needs to
hope not.
move. I hope not, but I just think there's a school of thought where he's going to pick up a belt and not avoid Janabek, but move up before it takes too much out of him, which could happen in a Janabek fight. In terms of Adames, though, look, he's tough, he's durable. He's a world champion for a reason, because he is hard to beat. He's come forward, he's aggressive. He doesn't have a massive highlight reel that you can spend half an hour watching on YouTube this week. That's the reality. But he boxes very well, very nastily, very niggly, and he's a puzzle that Hamza Shiraz is going to have to figure out. I do not believe that Hamza Shiraz blows him away in 6 rounds. If he does, I'll be jumping on my roof and waxing lyrical about Hamza Shiraz, because he is then propelling himself into a pound-for-pound top 15 debate, isn't he? Realistically, he can get this weekend. It's going to be a tough and long slog. I think we see Hamza Shiraz gut tested. I'll hang on for a prediction for a minute, but it's not as one-sided as some people have you believe.
Yeah. Dave?
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I don't see it being a blast out. It's very easy to get caught up in the hype of thinking, Hamza Shiraz is just going to walk through him in 1 or 2 rounds. But people don't really know much about Carlos Adames other than like the hardcore fans. I think he's going to be there to frustrate. I think he's going to come in. He's going to have his own game plan. Like you said, he's not easy to beat anyway. I think he's going to, I think he's going to be solid. I think he's going to come out. He's going to, frustrate Hamza Shiraz. He knows that Hamza Shiraz has got he's got the bigger attributes. He's got the longer levers. He can work him from range. But I think he's going to. I wouldn't say start slow, but I think he's going to start cautious. I think he's going to come into it, Carlos Adames, and try and work out what Hamza Shiraz is going to offer. And on the flip side of that, I don't see Hamza Shiraz coming out the gate and trying to take him out early as well. So I think it's going to be a cagey affair for the first 4 or 5 rounds. Just waiting, being patient, and seeing if there's openings there to be made. So I do believe that Hamza Shiraz will be the new world champion come Saturday night. I believe it's going to go late, and for me, Hamza Shiraz gets a stoppage in round 9.
Do I go next, Liam, or you?
You go next, mate.
I'm going to hate. See, this is what I'm normally very, very biased to my favourite fighters, and I want Hamza Shiraz to win. I really do. I want him to win, get that belt and unify with Janibek. And then obviously my bias goes towards Janibek. I'm not one of these that go for British fights just because they're born on the same island as me. My heart tells me my heart tells me Shiraz, but my head, when you close your eyes and think how it can play out, I spoke about Virgil Ortiz catching Ismail Madrimov cold, and I think there'll be a time in the fight where Carlos Adames does get past that jab, does gut check Hamza Shiraz, like Liam says, but the gut check won't be a gut check. It'll be a chin check. And I don't think he gets up. I think Carlos Adames stops him late. I'm going to go Carlos Adames around 10. I hate saying that, but I don't know. Oh, yeah, I'm going to stick with it. Carlos Adames around 10. Go on, Liam. Get off the fence.
I'm the same as you. I don't just go with British fighters because they're British fighters. I'm happy to back against British fighters, but in this case, Carlos Adames is a typical PBC fighter in the sense that he fights once a year. That inactivity in comparison to Hamza Shiraz,
cost him.
Yes, I think some people within Queensbury even have underestimated Adames and see this as a soft touch, and they're going to be in for a bit of a shock at times during the fight on Saturday night. But on the whole, the activity and the trajectory that Hamza Shiraz is on, I'm going to go for a points victory for Hamza Shiraz. I do think Adames is going to have moments. It wouldn't surprise me if after 6 rounds, Hamza needs to change something up and come from behind on the scorecards. But I just think in the second half of the fight, the fact that this is his 4th fight in 12 months is going to make a difference. Whereas Adames has fought 3 times in the last 4 years. That's the difference here.
It's not enough, is it?
That activity is going to be a factor in the fight. Hamza Shiraz and Venue via a points victory.
Yeah, makes sense. See, he comes out with different things, Liam does. I literally forgot about the activity. You're right. He does fight once a year, if that. It's not enough. So I might change mine now you've said that. No, you're joking. No. This one, guys, Shakur versus Floyd, lightweight belt on the line. I think for me, I think a lot of people, this is a 60-40, 70-30 in favour of Shakur Stevenson. Again, it's Eddie versus Oscar, but I think Eddie wins this one hands down. Shakur Stevenson, he personifies hit and don't get hit. To me, he's not boring. I don't care what anybody says. If your opponent can't land on you under Queensbury rules, under you hit and don't get hit, not you hit and we'll wait for you to hit me back, then he's not doing anything wrong. Is it going to be boring for the casual fan? Possibly. Will Floyd Schofield land on him? Occasionally, maybe. Has he got enough to beat him at this stage of his career? He's only a baby. No, I think Shakur Stevenson wins this quite comfortably, guys, even with a half broken hand, which doesn't look like he's healed properly. He's just so hard to hit. And he's got the knack of navigating his way out of the way. He's pivoting his footwork. And just to break it down quite easily, because I think this is, for me, is a very easy fight to predict. Shakur Stevenson by unanimous decision, possibly even a late stoppage, depending on how much success he has on Schofield. Fair play for Schofield. Yes, he's getting weighed in, biggest payday of his career. I'll take on Shakur Stevenson. Go, reach for the stars, son. Go and you've got an opportunity, a free shot of gold there. You've got a game plan. You've got ways to work out Shakur Stevenson. Nobody's done it yet, and I don't think this is the guy to do it, boys. Shakur Stevenson by points.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, Shakur Stevenson by points. I do, like I say, fair play to Floyd Schofield, because there are not many people have gone and done what he done and got his shot. There's a lot of talk that goes around about, I want to fight this person, and it never materializes. He come off a good win in his last fight, and he's gone straight away, I want Shakur next, and he's got his wish. And
big jump, possibly.
But he's young enough to come again. Yes, he may lose this fight, but he's a young man. And, losing a fight to Shakur Stevenson doesn't define him. So, listen, we talk about dare to be great. Listen, this opportunity's coming, he's gone for it. And this endearing in the sport these days. We talk about padded records and protecting the O. Floyd Schofield's, he's shooting his shot. But I think it's a step too far at this stage in his career. Yeah. And I think this is where he's going to find out that there's levels to this. So yeah, I mean, I can't say too much more on that. I'm with you. I think Shakur Stevenson posts to a points win, but Floyd Schofield does his reputation no harm in taking this fight and being in the fight. I think he's going to try it, but it'll just be just a level above for me.
Are you a fan of the running, as they call it, Liam?
Look, I'm like you. I can appreciate this sweet science, and I appreciate what Shakur Stevenson brings to the table as a fighter and his skill set. I will say, though, you've got to go back to Jamel Herring and Oscar Valdez, which were both 2021 and 2022. For the last time I looked at a Shakur Stevenson performance and was impressed, in the sense that he's not just won, he's made a statement and he's made the fights entertaining. He stopped Herring in round 10 and he got a wide points victory against Valdez, and that was at the division below. I absolutely love him. I think he's a fantastic fighter. But he is an example of a fighter, like I spoke about earlier, that's got high off his own supply. As talented as he is, as good as he is, he's believed the hype and the vitriol around him. He's not dealt very well with the boos and arenas emptying during fights. He's, sort of came out with some outlandish excuses and not really tried to, accept that he's not everyone's cup of tea. And I just think it's been a while since we've seen him excite us. And look, you don't have to be exciting. Floyd Mayweather, when Floyd became pretty boy, Floyd was exciting. By the time he was money, he was dull as dishwater. But you still appreciated what you could do if you like that style of boxing. However, and I've got receipts again on this for anyone that thinks I'm just trying to be outrageous going back to the end of last year, there's always a shock on these Riyadh season cards. Yeah. I'm backing Floyd Schofield for a 10th round stoppage. I just think the time that Shakur spent out of the ring, that hand injury is not healed. And I'd made this prediction before. I said his hand times. The hand isn't healed properly. They're rushing him back because Eddie is watching him money drain out of him after the money it costs to bring him over from Top Rank. You rush a fighter back with a hand injury, it doesn't end well. And if Shakur can't get him out of there inside 3 or 4 rounds, or that hand goes again, you just know Shakur Stevenson's going to panic. He's going to be looking around to his corner for help. He lets off distress signals in fights quite often. He was aware when people were leaving the arena. He just doesn't always seem laser focused in. It's a massive step up for Floyd Schofield. It is a huge outside bet, and I'd be very surprised if I hear anyone else say this week other than Oscar. But I do believe that Floyd Schofield, via stoppage, to cause one of the biggest shocks we're going to see this year.
It's a bold statement,
brilliant.
That's
brilliant. That is brilliant. I love it. That's great. And you know what, Liam, you sell it very well. The way that you speak, the way that you articulate what you're trying to say is very good. Do you think that's the major factor in it then? Do you think that it's the injury? If for all intents and purposes, Shakur Steven comes in fully fit, there is no hand injury, do you think the outcome's still the same, or do you think that the injury is a massive factor, or the coming back from the injury is a massive factor?
If Shakur had fought and beat Joe Cordina in October like he was meant to, and was active and was boxing all the time, I'd give Schofield a puncher's chance, but my prediction would be Shakur Stevenson, like you boys say, on points quite comfortably. But he's just rushed back. We know it was a double break of the hands. That was in September. We're only in start of February now. And that's his punching hand. That's his dominant hand. It just doesn't sit right with me. I just think Floyd Schofield's going to have to be patient early on. He may have to absorb a lot of punishment because Shakur's going to want to make a statement on this big stage. But if he bides his time right and gets this into past the first 4 rounds, I think he can take over and stop Shakur. And it will be Shakur's heart and his ability to let off the stress signals that let him down in here. Schofield is a young, hungry kid. He's not a champion at the end of his career like Jamel Herring was, or he's not an overmatched fighter that's basically in there for a payday. Yes, okay, he's in there for a payday, but he has the potential to be a world champion in his own right, Floyd Schofield, and he's going to maximise this opportunity for me.
Brilliant shout, that is. I wasn't expecting that.
I'm getting nagged by the missus at the moment, so we'll have to rush through these next 2 fights and quickly on to Monday's one. So Daniel Dubois versus Joseph Parker. Liam, you said you wanted to say something about Andy Lee, obviously referring to Joseph Parker, mate. Crack on. What's the...
Look, Andy Lee was a fantastic boxer and was a student of the Kronk Gym. Boxed under Manny Stewart down the back end of his career. That's how he picked up his world title. He then went in with Sugar Hill Stewart, and that's where he learned his craft as a second in corners. He's now got a few fighters in his gym, and he's doing the right things. Look, Joseph Parker, by his own admission, won a world title against Andy Ruiz too early in his career. He lost it to Anthony Joshua, and then in his rush to stay relevant because he was scared that no one was going to remember him, rushed into the Dillian White fight and lost that fight. So he had 2 quite high-profile defeats in a row that could have completely derailed his career. He then made the difficult decision to leave Kevin Barry, his longtime trainer from when he was an amateur. Didn't go to Andy Lee straight away, but eventually became mates with Tyson and settled on Andy Lee. And Andy Lee has improved him. The Deontay Wilder performance was a masterclass in how you deal with someone who only has one shot. Yes, Wilder never threw the one shot all night, but Joseph Parker didn't fall into any of the traps. He got 4 or 5 punches off, moved out of the way, and then carried on. Listened to Andy Lee's game plan all night. Against Zhang, he should have possibly looked to stop Zhang down the back end of that fight, but Andy Lee told him to get behind his jab, keep breaking him down. You don't need to do anything rash. It's different from the Jared Anderson, what we saw weekend just gone. That is a relationship built on trust, built on I as the fighter and I as the trainer fully are immersed in one another and will work together to the common goal. And it's improved Joseph Parker no end. Look, Daniel Dubois is incredible. What he's done since the Usyk fight and the path he's on when everyone questioned if he had the ability to win a British title again is fantastic. I just feel there's still something missing from him. They're still not fully sold on Daniel Dubois. I think he's produced some fantastic performances. And look, stopping AJ at Wembley will probably go down as the best moment of his career when he retires in 10, 15 years' time. But I still think something isn't quite right with him. I mean, he was nearly taken out by AJ before he landed that uppercut. That's the reality. AJ had his best 20 seconds of the fight. And I just question a streetwise Joseph Parker at this stage of his career, I think maybe too much for Daniel Dubois.
Sorry, mate, just quickly, just to mention there, when you mentioned about Wilder, you are right, Liam. We've got to remember, nobody knew that version of Wilder was getting into the ring that night. So he prepared for that one-trick pony Wilder, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking exactly the same thing leading up to this show today. I think Andy Lee is the biggest factor in this fight. If you look at this, and Daniel Dubois has come off some really good wins, like you said there before, Usyk. But if you look at the opponents he's been in with, a static Jarrell Miller, Hrgovic, who turned out to be, all hype. I don't want to be disrespectful, but he did. Anthony Joshua, who walks in straight lines. Andy Lee is not going to train Joseph Parker to be standing in straight in front of him to take the right hand that Dubois is going to throw. So I believe that Joseph Parker's game plan is going to be the difference here. And I was thinking it earlier. So Daniel Dubois does look devastating when you're static. I don't think Joseph Parker's going to be that. I think Joseph Parker's going to pick his moments. And listen, we all know Daniel Dubois is beatable. We've all seen it. And when at the minute everything's going his way, but it's been a long time since everything's not going his way, and it's how he reacts to that. And I think that Joseph Parker is going to try and take him back to the days before he's gained all this confidence.
The triple knee days.
No,
is he triple kneeling?
I don't think he's going to triple knee, but I do think that Joseph Parker. I'm going to go for it. Joseph Parker's going to win, be a 2-time world champion, and I believe he's going to do it late stoppage. I think the referee's going to jump in.
You go for me this time, Liam. Maybe mine up there.
Look, I mean, we speak about the Andy Lee effect. We've also got to give Don Charles and Kieran Farrell the same props for what they've done with Dubois. Absolutely confidence. Forget boxing ability for a second. They've taken an absolutely shot to pieces young man into a world champion. Fair play to them. But again, I agree with you, mate. Dubois still comes forward in straight lines, has beaten limited opposition. I mean, Miller should never fight again. That's all I say on that. Hrgovic looked like he was a hype job, was shown to be it, and didn't have the heart once he got cut. And I don't want to say it was the performance of a lifetime against Anthony Joshua, but everything in that moment feels like that was a performance of a lifetime that he produced at Wembley in September. I just feel Joseph Parker will drown him. He's been with Andy Lee now for 3 years. They've bounced back from a loss together against Joe Joyce in their first fight together, where everyone thought Parker was done. I mean, look at Joe Joyce now and look at Joseph Parker now. The comparisons is you would have thought that would have been the other way around looking at them.
Yeah.
This is the time for Joseph Parker. They say heavyweights hit their peak when they're 33, 34. Joseph Parker's just turned 33 years of age. Yes, there's a New Zealand flag up behind me. I lived there when I was a kid. Anyone questioning that, that's the reason for that being up there. But I don't think it'll be a stoppage, mate. I think he'll box to orders and he'll take it wide on the points. I think he'll get dropped, Parker, in the first 3 rounds. He'll be on the seat of his pants like he was against Zhang, but he'll come back and box beautifully and it will be comfortable enough on the scorecard. So up off the seat of his pants to win on points, to become a 2-time world champion, Joseph Parker.
Yeah. You boys have taken everything But I've written my notes. You've taken it out of my mouth, and I agree. I think Don Charles is going to be after the three of us, because if you go against one of his fighters, you're not allowed an opinion. And I'm gonna make it a threesome, if you like. Exactly the same as Liam. I think he goes points. I think he boxes to instructions. Does try, and when he gets the opportunity, he tries to take Dubois out. I actually think Dubois might be put on the back on his backside. He hits the canvas, gets up, shows the heart he has done in previous fights against Kevin Lerena, against Jarrell Hergovich when he was getting beat up in the early part of the fight. Weathers the storm, but it won't be enough. There is something missing, and I think Joseph Parker is a better fighter now than when he was world champion. And it would be flowers, kudos to Andy Lee in particular. So yeah, I'm going to Joseph Parker to become a 2-time world champion, same as you guys. 2 more to preview. Artur Beterbiev, the main event versus Dmitry Bivol, part 2. Undisputed on the line again. 6 months ago, was it only 4 months ago, we've got this back on the table. There's a lot of money been thrown at these two guys, but Beterbiev is 40, 41, whatever he is, defending all his belts against Dmitry Bivol. Super close fight last time. Was it a majority or split decision? Eddie Hearn was moaning that night as well. I backed Beterbiev. I thought he'd just done enough. So the question here is, because of time-wise, guys, who makes the adjustments and how? Obviously, Beterbiev's already won, so does he need to make adjustments? So really, it's classed as Dmitry Bivol, but you guys might see it different. You may think Beterbiev does need to make other adjustments, because remember, this was the only guy in his 21 fights. Bivol was the only guy he couldn't get rid of. He's blasted everyone away so far. So yeah, original questions: who makes the adjustments and how?
I think Bivol needs to make the adjustments, but that might be his downfall. Now, I had Beterbiev winning the fight 116, 112, and I put that on Twitter, and everyone was coming at me over that. And that was one of the judges' his scores. So I think Bivol needs to make the adjustments. I think he needs to be busier. But in that, I think that could be his downfall. I think, but a lot of Beterbiev's work in the last fight went unnoticed. I think he went to the body very well, which wasn't being picked up by the comms. But it was a close fight. I mean, I know I scored it 116, 112, but it still was a close fight. So it's fine margins for me in this fight. What Bivol, I don't know what Bivol does to win this fight clearly, because Artur Beterbiev, for me, yes, he's knocked out all of his opponents, dropped them other than Bivol. But I think people get blindsided by that. His actual fundamentals and his boxing skills are underrated because he blasts people out. So I still think this is going to be a fine margins type of fight. Will Bivol be more active, to try and, because he for me, he's not going to want to leave it to the judges. He feels like he was screwed. So in that, does he walk onto something for trying to be overzealous in trying to impress the judges, or does he go for the stoppage? He's not known for his power shots. It's difficult to know what the other tactics are going to be. But for me, it's repeat. I believe Artur Beterbiev repeats the job, and I believe that he does it on points.
Yeah, look, I mean, I scored the first fight 115, 113 to Bivol. I scored it that on the night, and I scored it that watching it back the next day. That's me being honest.
Yeah.
In terms of who needs to make the adjustments, I know Beterbiev won the fight, but I actually think he needs to make more adjustments than Bivol does. And when I say that, I mean between rounds 4 and rounds 9, Beterbiev was not enjoying himself in there. Bivol's jab was strong with that left hand following through, and Beterbiev couldn't get into his rhythm. He couldn't get his ramrod jab off. He couldn't get out of the way of Bivol's shots, and he looks a bit lost in his corner. Yes, ultimately he won the fight, and that's all that matters. He's the undisputed champion of the world. He's got all the belts. But that middle period of the fight, Bivol was on top for me. He had Beterbiev questioning what he was doing, and he pulled a rabbit out of the hat down the back end of the fight, but he then found a way to get back into the fight late on and win it. But the reality is that middle part of the fight, Dmitry Bivol was doing what I expected him to do, which was simple 1-2s. It was stopping Beterbiev getting his right hand off. That's what he done. Yes, he lost the fight, but I think a similar game plan, but just doing that from earlier on. He allowed Beterbiev to take the first 3 rounds. He didn't get his output going early enough. If he can get his output going from the first bell and have Beterbiev feeling as bamboozled as he was during those middle rounds in October, then I believe we can see a different result. Beterbiev needs to be aware that if he does let his hands go in this fight, Bivol is a very good counterpuncher. Everyone thinks just because there's not many stoppages on his records, he can't punch. He is a very effective counterpuncher that can drop, stop, and hurt people. And Artur Beterbiev does not want to become that person that gets stopped and dropped by Dmitry Bivol in the biggest fight of his life. I think it may be cagier than the first fight. I mean, the first fight didn't set the world on fire, but for us as boxing, hardcore, we absolutely loved it. It was a high-skilled, high-level chess match. It wasn't a fight, it was a chess match. I just favour Dmitry Bivol. I just think Beterbiev, is he taking this rematch so quickly because he knows if he leaves it any longer, his body's going to break down and we're never going to see it again? Will his body break down during the fight? I'm not saying it's going to, but is he forcing himself to go so soon because he knows this is his only chance of ever fighting again? I think Beterbiev retires after this fight, win or lose. I don't think his body can do it anymore. And if that's playing in his mind and he's questioning his body, we know Bivol's still got some more gears to go through. We know what he still wants to achieve. I think I think Bivol gets this back on the scorecards, probably similarly as close to the first fight was against him in October, but Dmitry Bivol and the new undisputed light heavyweight champion.
Yeah, good analysis there. I honestly, I think if Dmitry Bivol gets the chance and finds the gaps, I think he needs to sit down on some of his shots and potentially not stop Beterbiev, but puts him down, which gives him a 10-8 round, which may be enough on the cards. We've seen Beterbiev be knocked down twice, not particularly massive shots. Callum Johnson hurt him. He was wobbling all over the place and Johnson chose not to jump all over him. And we've seen Yard wobble him as well. I think that the stamina, the endurance and things like that would have been worked on in between the first fight and this fight as well. They both look gassed. So you are right, Liam. Beterbiev didn't look comfortable at times with that jab from Dmitry Bivol. I think he still needs to box the same game, but I do think at times you're going to have to sort of roll the dice, sit down the shots, and see if you can get a knockdown or a knockout and get that 10-8 round in there as well to make the difference on the scorecards. But I'm the same. I went Beterbiev the first time. The adjustments for me need to be made by Dmitry Bivol, and I'm going the same. I'm going Dmitry Bivol to win on points, and that would be the end of Artur Beterbiev at light heavyweight or in boxing, I think. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, just quickly, obviously that was our long preview and predictions for the best card in boxing. But the boxing doesn't finish until Monday afternoon. So for us here in the UK, Japan is the destination. Monday afternoon, with whatever you eat for your lunch, we get to see pound for pound superstar Junto Nakatani do his thing over in Japan. He's defending his WBC bantamweight belts. He takes on unbeaten Mexican challenger David Cuellar. I'm not sure if this is a mandatory or voluntary. I don't really care. They're both two big bantamweights. They won't be at bantamweight for too long. They're both two big boys. 5 foot. I think Cuellar's touching 6 foot. He's absolutely huge. They both like to come forward. They both like to throw. They both look for the KO. Both very exciting fighters. The problem for David Cuellar is, guys, he's fighting a guy that's, to me and to a lot of the boxing world, a very, very special fighter in Junto Nakatani. Most boxing fans have got Nakatani in their pound-for-pound top 10. I know I have. I know Dave has. And in these lower weight classes, your 115 up to your 122, the names are Ban Rodriguez, Anaya Inoue, and Junto Nakatani. Yes, we don't focus too much on the lower weight classes, but when you're talking about those weight classes, you never kind of back against those guys. I think we're going to have a good fight, a decent fight. I think Nakatani will be asked questions. But again, I talk about class. I talk about IQ. I talk about ring generalship. He'll have more than enough to deal with this guy. And then what do we do? Nakatani takes care of Cuellar. Does he go chasing the rest of the champions in the division? Or do we get that fight that we've all been craving for? It's not going away. Nakatani versus Inoue. But just to finish the show, boys, Junto Nakatani versus David Cuellar, Monday lunchtime. I'm going Nakatani to stop David Cuellar mid-rounds. I'm going to go round 6, body shot, game over to that big torso, that big frame. How are you boys seeing it on Monday?
Go on, Liam, you can go first.
Look, I think Cuellar, there's only I've just checked, there's only half an inch in it in height in this one. So Nakatani's 5'8", Cuellar's 5'8.5". So there's not much height difference as I initially thought. I thought it was a bigger height difference in it.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
But I think Nakatani makes a big statement. I think Cuellar gets absolutely blown away inside 3 rounds. I just think Nakatani if Nakatani wants the Inoue fight, he needs to keep making the statements he's making. So taking this late, whilst it may be the best way to go about it, isn't going to get him any closer to getting a big Inoue payday. So for me, he blows Queller away quite comfortably inside 3 rounds. And look, the thing with these light divisions is they don't, if this Nakatani and Inoue, I say that, and Bam was doing this, say 140 upwards, they would be on everyone's lips. Everyone would be waxing lyrical. Everyone would want them in Saudi, X, Y, and Z. But because they're doing it at the lower weight classes, they go under the radar. Nakatani was in my top 3 fighters of 2024 for how he carried himself, how he won fights, and how he's just so spiteful. He's the type of geezer that if you saw down a back alley, you probably wouldn't think much of. But Jesus, if you pissed him off, you'd know about it quite quickly, Nakatani. And I just think he feels disrespected. I mean, his English isn't the best. We don't hear it probably as we would do if it was a British fighter. But you can tell he feels disrespected by Team Inoue and how they keep overlooking him. They don't feel he's worthy of the challenge. Well, now you've got a platform. It's not an Inoue fight weekend. Inoue isn't fighting for another 3 or 4 months. Show everyone why you're worthy of the Inoue challenge. And I think inside 3 rounds, as I've said, Nakatani, a stoppage, barrage of punches, ref jumps in, and in a quite quaint and quintessential Japanese way, he'll call out Inoue afterwards for a tumble later this year after he deals with Picasso.
Perfect.
Yeah, I agree with you, boys. I agree. Like I say, we all want the Nakatani Inoue fight. I mean, that's the number one fight that I want over them all at the moment. I'm so high on that fight, and you're right what you say there, Liam. For that to happen, he needs to make a statement, and he needs to keep making statements. And I agree with you. I think Queller's going to have. I don't think he's going to be blasted out so early. I think he's going to, I'd say, have his moments. I feel like he's going to be durable enough for the first half of the fight. So I believe that Nakatani will win, and I believe he will win by knockout. But I think it's going to go a little bit later. And I think it's going to go round 8.
Lovely jubbly. So Nakatani to finish off the weekend in style. Now, boys, I'm getting nagged to death by my missus via text. I've got loads of kids around the house. I weren't going to do this tonight. I was going to do it Sunday night. I messaged Liam, but I was too pissed last night to do it. So I'm glad I've done it tonight. They're ready to go to bed. I'm ready to get a bottle of wine and go to bed. Upload this, download this, whatever. Dave's been at work all day. Don't know what Liam's been doing, but he's probably ready for bed himself, unless he's got another podcast to go on and do a bit more guruing on that. But that's the end of the episode, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the review. I hope you've enjoyed the preview and the predictions, the bold statements, everything that's gone with it. Liam, do you want to do any shout outs for your handles and your podcast, mate?
Yeah, so my handle on X is at Liam_Tully9. Appreciate all the follows on there as it is on the screen right now. If you're not already subscribed to the SW Fight Hub YouTube channel or the Jay's Fight Talk YouTube channel, get yourself subscribed to that. That's where you'll find me near enough 7 days a week chatting about some sort of fights. Can't seem to stay away. The 3 of us boys, similar to you two. And yes, stay tuned. Tune into No Punches Pulled tomorrow night. There'll be an announcement for the new home and Liam's Fight Night picks. And I look forward to having you two boys on next week. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, mate. Thank you. And yes, we'll be on next week and we'll be tuning into all your stuff. Fantastic listen. So that's the end of podcast episode 100. And thanks again for coming on for our 100th episode. I didn't think we'd be doing it this long, but we look to count down to 200. And we will start with 101 to do our review of the weekend coming on Monday. So everyone else, have a great weekend or great week leading up. Enjoy fight week. There's bound to be all sorts of things happening. Stay safe. And as I always say, enjoy the bloody boxing and you'll definitely enjoy this one. So Liam, Dave, peace out, boys. And I'll speak to you soon.
Cheers. Thanks, Liam. Thanks for coming on, mate. Cheers.
Pleasure, mate.